Hello, everybody. What's going on? Happy Sunday evening on the East Coast of your East Coast. If you're out somewhere else, like let's say in Taiwan, like I am, it's happy Monday morning.
Still happy
And
Father's Day here.
yeah, happy Father's Day, everybody. Happy Father's Day. So we're going to get started in just a little bit. And we have, the esteemed Mr. James Darcy here with us today from the Highland Park brand and Edrington. But we're going to get started in just a little bit. So everybody, please sit back, relax. We're probably going to get started in about 10 minutes. We're just going to let people, filter in here. We're just going to start ushering people in here. So sit back and relax. And if you have to go midway through the show or anything like that, this recording will be on the Whiskey Steward page, so we can always go back and take a look at everything. But sit back and relax, everybody. We have a few people already on. Thanks for joining us, and Patrick, because my two most loyal viewers, Patrick from the Clonakilty Distillery, and Belinda from Pittsburgh. Yeah, so Patrick's with a whiskey maker himself too. So, but also a very also a student of the game, if you will. All right, so I'm just gonna do some technical stuff. We have more people joining. Just good seeing everybody. Say hi. Tell us where you're from. James, you should be able to see people's comments on the right there too, right? Can you?
Oh, let me click into it. Yep. I don't see anything yet. So if somebody can comment, then I know that I can see it.
Okay.
Oh, there we go. Hey, guys. Sorry. I see it now.
Yeah. All right. Let me see here. So everybody sit back, relax, just chill out, relax. Maybe we should play some music. Do you hear that music?
I hear that music.
Okay. There you go. You play a little music, and people can sit back and relax a little bit. Happy Father's Day once again, everybody. We're gonna get started in just a few moments, my friends. Everybody, grab your favorite Highland Park and or tea or whatever you want to drink. No pressure to drink here, but just enjoy. A few moments, my friends. We're gonna get started in just a few. Thanks everybody for joining. Everybody's just kind of filing in here. Everybody, grab your favorite Highland Park. Welcome, Pinchas. Sorry if I mispronounced that name, Pinchas. Mr. Chain, is that Mr. Pinchas Chain? Where are you coming in from? Hello from Indianapolis. It says James. Jeff says James. Didn't we just do this last Thursday? Did we?
So I think I was speaking to the Glen Rothus on Thursday. So yes, Jeff, it's me. I'm back. You know,
Can't get enough of you.
you got to listen to my colleague speak to Highland Park, but we were really just we were dancing around the edges when we were talking on Thursday. I mean, we were, that was a shorter session. We're going to get much more into it today. So I know Jeff's going to be probably excited to hear a lot more than we got into last Thursday.
Hello, everybody, again. Just sit back, relax. We're going to get started in just a little bit. We're just letting all our friends hop on and join us. Our friend Jeff says, replenish my full volume yesterday. Oh, I do like the full volume.
I think it's one of my favorite things about Highland Park is just how well the Spirit plays with so many different cast types. It's everything that Gordon does with it these days. I think it just comes out wonderfully well.
In full volume, that's a predominantly bourbon cask maturation bottling, right?
Exclusively, yeah. It's
exclusively,
yeah.
So that in itself is kind of rare,
right? I mean, it's there's my bottle there. Yeah, we do, like on the thing you'll find a little Marshall stack, so we do turn it up to 11 on the bottle as well to really go for that full volume.
Okay.
I love it. Love it.
So many great bottlings.
The only challenge, and it's either a blessing or a curse, is there's so many bottlings that there's so many bottlings. Like it's trying to find them all is something.
Yeah. It's kind of like Pokemon. You gotta collect them all,
I definitely should have started a lot longer ago if I was going to do that.
Yeah. Or try to,
yeah.
Hello, everybody. We're going to get started in just a little bit. Thanks for joining us, and we will get started soon. And just sit back and relax, enjoy the music for a little bit. We're just letting everybody kind of hop on and joining us. But please chime in and tell us where you're from and say hi. Alan Brody from our friend from Scotch Addict. Yep. My favorite distillery, Alan says.
Who would have known it? And so, like, full disclosure, I do look after and speak to, all Edrington brands, but Highland Park is my favorite distillery as well.
Oh my gosh, you shouldn't say that. It's like, saying who's your favorite child.
I'm equally besotted with the Glen Rothus. But it's great because Glen Rothus has we still have a cooperage. We've got that side, but I don't know. It's something about Orkney. I think it's Orkney that gives the extra allure to me. Like it's a cool place.
Yeah, it's the Viking culture and history that you're drawn to. Maybe
I think like with the whole Viking thing. Like when you go there, though, it isn't Scotland. You know that it isn't. You know that it's not. I mean, they call where we are the mainland, but it's not the mainland. You can feel it.
Right. Hello, everybody. Thanks again for joining. We're going to get started in just a little bit. We're just letting people kind of flow in here. joining us. Please say
Alan.
hi and tell us where you're from. We have what we have here. Paul says I still have 2 discontinued HP 15s unopened. Oh yeah, those are good.
Yeah.
Paul also says one of my favorites. Sharon, okay, hi Sharon. Hey Alex. Sharon was with us when we were talking about sensory, and she's a sensory scientist actually. Alan says, hello gentlemen, sommelier at the Bygone restaurant at the Four Seasons in Baltimore.
Alan, hey, you're my neighbor. No, Will Escalante, who works with you up there.
Okay. You guys know each other?
I don't know that we do, but we're very close to each other, and I've been to the Bygone many times.
Okay, gotcha. Where are you right now, James?
I'm in Maryland as well, just north of DC.
You're in Maryland as well. Okay,
yeah,
gotcha.
just north of DC.
Gotcha. Belinda says, yep, saying everybody here. Sharon's from Jersey over here. All right, we're getting started in just a little bit, folks. Sit back, relax.
I see Sharon saying, damn good memory. Were you drinking whiskey at the time? Because I know that it's good for your memory, connecting those smells, right?
Yeah. I was drinking whiskey. I think I was. No. Or maybe it wasn't. I can't remember anymore. Drinking too much whiskey.
I mean, it's early. I mean, it's early for you.
Yeah. So actually, I'm not gonna because I need to go drive and do some stuff a little later. So I'm gonna hold off on the drinking. But I do have some tea here with me.
Perfect.
But I have drank many a Highland Park. Believe you me. So so I definitely will still talk about the flavor profile and everything like that. I'm actually personally a big fan of a lot of older Highland Parks or independent bottlings of Highland Park. Are we allowed to talk about independent bottlings? Since they're not OBs.
We can talk about it. Let's keep it on the table. I just can't, especially when they're doing their own things with it. All I can speak to is the spirit. The spirit's, that new make is going to be the same.
Well, so let me say this. I really appreciate the single cast strength versions, which you do have one behind you.
Yep.
In the sack.
I think I've got another one down here as well. Yeah, I've got a couple behind me.
I really love those. Just being able to drink it at a high ABV is just sublime for me. Mary from Texas, hello. Hope to visit Scotland in October. Alan, I moved here March 9th. Will is my only friend. That sounds sad.
It's a good friend to have. He's a great guy as well.
Oh yes, yeah, Sharon. Yeah, you know what? Yeah, Sharon did remind me. I did have a few whiskeys because I was trying to use a few different glasses to talk about the way it expresses itself.
What kind of glasses were you using?
So I use a Glencairn. I use I think it was a Rocks glass. I use one of these 1920s blender glasses, which I really enjoy nowadays. Yeah. And and it just makes me look pretentious though. Pinkies out.
Have you used the neat glass? I haven't tried using that yet. It goes out and then.
There's neats. There's so many different glasses out there, and really they really all express themselves in different ways.
Yeah.
Hello everybody. We're going to start in probably just 1 minute here. Hopefully everybody's already on. We looks like we have about 30 people on with us so far. So if you so this is going to get pretty nerdy. So please join us if the nerd level gets too much for you and you have to back out, it's fine. You have to go to sleep, then this will be recorded and you can view it on my page, The Whiskey Steward. And you can also view it on the Philadelphia Whiskey Society page, which is a group I also run. And Yeah, but let me just share it in one more place and little frog in my throat.
Those frogs.
Those frogs. Hello from Indiana, Bob says. And Randall from Chicago says hi. Alan says, I haven't found a counterpart age statement IB that's as good as the OB, especially the 18, 21, 25, or 30 year. Yes.
And
counterpart age statement IB that's as good as the OB? Okay.
I mean, you know how it is for all of us, right? At the end of the day, we're all going to have our own taste no matter what. You know, there's
no, there's not a competition. Oh, excuse me. All right. So, yeah, please everybody chime in. Tell us where you're from, maybe what you're drinking. Are you guys drinking Highland Park tonight? You know. All right. I'm just going to share this with one of my, also my other whiskey group in Taiwan here, if anybody wants to join us. All right. Well, let's get the party started here. Natasha. Hi, James from Taiwan. Jeff from Indy here. I guess that's Indiana. Oh, yeah. So we do have some friends from Indiana because we had a gentleman with a whiskey group out there that shared this on his page. I am in Muncie, Bob says. Ribbit. I don't know. Ribbit. I don't know. Yes. Okay. All right. So, thanks everybody. We're going to officially get started here. We do have the Edrington / Highland Park brand ambassador James Darcy here, who's based out of Maryland here. I'm based out of Philadelphia most of the time. I'm actually currently in Taiwan right now, hiding out. And but we're making this work. And thanks everybody for joining us. Please chime in. If you guys have any questions, just post the questions on the side here, and I'll be able to see them. And well, I see Tanisha just joined. Tanisha's from Maryland as well. And yeah, so please feel free to leave messages. This is a live broadcast, so it's a live interaction here. And we are very happy because we do have a fully very nice PowerPoint presentation that James slaved away at and did a really good job on. And all right, so James, why don't we get started with you, and why don't you give some introductions and tell us about yourself, and
sure.
give us tell us how you got into the game.
Yeah. So my name's James Darcy. Shelfless, same promotion. You can find me at Whiskey Darcy with no E, because I don't typically work a huge amount with bourbon. If you need to find me on Instagram, but I've been with Edrington now for
Darcy at Highland Park, US. Here, there you go. Right on cue.
So I've been with Edrington now for a couple of years. I think maybe 2 years or so. Obviously, been a big fan of Highland Park for much longer than that. I came through the game. I was living in London. I'd finished my undergrad. Fell in love with cocktailing. Fell in love with Scotch. And so I ended up in the hospitality side of things. Then ended up working in beverage management. Ended up moving out to the States in 2014 because my wonderful wife is American, and so distance wasn't fun. And then we
married a Yankee.
That's it, and now my son is as well. So
yeah.
So I was really on the hospitality side of things. Around transition to beverage management, spent a good amount of time actually pivoting and working a lot within wine for a while, just because that's what the role needed from me. And then I really kind of circled it back, and fortunately Edrington was looking for a brand ambassador at a time. That I was like, great, I'm looking to kind of like transition back out from this world and kind of get back to my first love, which is really all about just sharing a dram and sharing the stories of a dram. And now I'm here, so here I am.
All right. Well, thank you for being here.
Yeah, my pleasure.
All right. So, you have so many pictures here. And so I think I'm just going to kind of go through some of these pictures and then just, we're just going to talk and discuss.
Yeah.
People can drink and ask questions and whatnot. And I have a set of questions and that obviously I'd like to ask you as well.
Yeah.
And so why don't we talk about the first thing here is just let's talk about geography, right? So what I'm gonna try to do today is talk about geography, location, and then history, and then every step of the distillation and process and whatnot.
Yeah.
But let's talk about this place.
Let's stay on this page for a bit, because I know you've already been through the slides. We're walking through kind of the order of making, right, with a couple of skips here and there that we can jump in. So let's keep this as the spaceholder for now, and we'll jump into geography.
Yeah. So let's talk about geography. The Highland Park is the most northerly distillery.
In
Scotland. I believe most northerly distillery in the world. Is that right?
Norway is on that front. I know that Norway has somewhere further north.
No, I'm sorry. A most northerly whiskey distillery in the world, I believe it was something like that, right?
So it could possibly be.
Can you make that claim?
There might be. So first off, a true claim that's not disputed yet is that we are the northernmost Scotch producer in the world. Right?
Yes.
That's
yeah. I think whiskey also. I want to say whiskey also. Maybe somebody can Google that. Somebody Google that and then get back to us.
Well, there is a distillery in the Shetland Islands, but I believe they're making gin. So that's further north.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So I remember. I think it was a whiskey thing. Yeah.
They might have laid down
whiskey. Okay.
Whiskey.
Laid down whiskey. Okay.
If they have, at least a year ago, it was not yet 3 years old, so it wasn't single malt. It wasn't Scotch. Maybe they've not laid any down. Not entirely sure. I guess we'll wait and see.
But definitely most northerly Scotch whiskey distillery.
Yes, and we know that for a fact because the other most northerly is kind of 5 miles down the road. So it's not far at all. Actually, I say 5 miles. It's not. I think it's half a mile down the road. It's much closer. It's not too far down to get to Scapa. So geography. We're right up there at like the 58th and 59th parallel. We are very far north. If you go in the middle of summer, you're only going to get a couple of hours of night, and even then, it's kind of a twilight. It never really gets fully dark. But then in the winter, of course, you've got the polar opposite, and those listening from Indiana, Jeff, that's something this week. I mean, you're saying Orkney, there's no such thing as bad weather. There's just the wrong clothing. But when it gets to winter, boy, you better have like the right clothing, because it can be pretty brutal. But the remarkable thing is, we're so far north that's potentially in other places. It's potentially polar bear territory. But this Gulf Stream,
Gulf,
this meeting point of the North Sea and then obviously the Atlantic as well, and the Gulf Stream coming through, does two things. It gives us heavy winds, and it also keeps it very temperate throughout the year. Like it's a very moderate climate. We don't have very big fluctuations in temperature. You can be there in the middle of summer and it's 9 degrees maybe, but if you go like the dead of winter, it can be about 9 degrees. So it's this remarkable year, and it does change more than that, but it's remarkable location for that.
Yeah, it's very interesting. So for us, people in the U.S., we're talking about up, the 59th or the 59th parallel, right? That's right. up towards Canada, right?
Yeah, it's in Canada.
Yep. It's in Canada, so it's up there, right? So just for people to get perspective, and it doesn't snow, not that much in Orkney though, because of the Gulf Stream. And in my research, I found that the weather, the temperature, goes anywhere from 5 degrees to maybe at most 19 degrees Celsius. So that translates to about Fahrenheit 40 degrees to about 60, 70 degrees Fahrenheit, right? So it doesn't ever get up to like 90 or 100 degrees, or like even in Philadelphia we get like 90 something, or Maryland, I mean 90 some degrees, but you never see that in see that in Orkney. And that also, we'll also talk about maturation, and how that kind of plays in with how the whiskey matures, that kind of very stable temperate climate, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But it's a very interesting
geography. Place, right? Say again, sorry.
It's a very interesting place, and just in terms of geography, location.
I mean,
weather.
You've got to remember as well that, of course, we are pulling from our own peat bog as well, right?
Yeah.
So that is obviously entirely, geography oriented. We'll get into that when we get there. We'll talk about the island and the peat, when we speak about, the peating process and things like that. But, I mean, that is, peat is geography, it just is. There's no other way around it. And actually we do actually also grow, there is some barley that's native to the island as well, tartan barley that we've used recently. That's also down to the just the geography, the physical geography of the island. The majority, you'll find there's huge amounts of beef. There's a lot of cattle on the island. Typically, that's like one of the biggest industries. Yeah, it's a big industry. You don't really see loads of barley fields. You can grow it there, and they do. But then one other thing, which I suppose is a geography thing, which is fascinating, is that the island produces more than it consumes renewably as well because of the wind, and they do have a good amount of wind farms kind of that support them.
Really? So, okay, interesting.
The island's total output, that's not to say that people aren't burning fires. Of course, we're burning peat. Like, it's a reality, that we have to confront. But the island as a whole, remarkably, they are completely sustainable because of the geography as well.
Oh, I never knew that there was wind farms there. That's awesome. Yeah. What are the other major? I imagine like maybe fishing and like maybe herding sheep or anything like that.
I mean, so I think the days of the sheep herder. Yeah, I mean, livestock, yes. I think the days of the sheep herder are probably a little bit less. From the 800s through to the 1460s, it was super popular just to set up there for raiding parties, but people don't really do that these days. The Orcadians aren't still coming down to England and raiding it.
Yeah. So that's also a cool name. So people from Orkney are called Orcadians. Right? Yeah. And so you're talking about raiding parties. So I think that's a great segment to kind of like the background of the whiskey and this Viking heritage, right? Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about that. Like, what what's this connection between Orkney and this Viking heritage and what we're seeing with Highland Park, and tell us more about that.
Yeah. So again, we're so far north. We're closer to Bergen in Norway than we are to London, and from the 800s through to I think it's 1468. I think. We were part of Denmark and Norway. We were under basically Viking rule. It was basically used as a settlement for raiding parties. They would come over from Norway, set up shop basically in Orkney. It was their land, and then they would use that as an outpost to then obviously do whatever they did, which of course, when we, as a brand, just to be clear, we're not condoning or supporting what Vikings did or do, but just that sense of spirit, the sense of adventure. No, not promoting that. But what we do know of the island even today, so the islands went back to them because there was an arranged marriage. They couldn't basically settle the account of the dowry, if you like, and so Scotland basically said, "Okay, I'm taking my islands back. Thank you very much." And so all of a sudden they're Scottish again. If you go to the island today, if you did like a DNA and me or one of the DNA genealogy tests, I believe that it's 1/3 of the people there will come back pretty much just saying that they're 100% Scandinavian because the education system's fantastic. Obviously, it's part of the UK, so that there's already free healthcare, so you don't have to be concerned about being on or off the island for things like that. A lot of people will stay on the island. They will leave the island because they grow up. This is how I understand it. They grow up being like, I've got to get out of this place. I'm sick of it. I need to leave. But then the second that they, get older, they want to come back because they really did like the quality of life and the community that was there. And the community, I think, that you have to have, and for any kind of island living is very high. And very small amount of like people from actual Scotland. So, the Orkney Islands, we're talking about 70 plus islands, and I think 17 of them are inhabited.
Okay.
And very few people from like the mainland, Scotland mainland, if you like, go to Orkney,
Yeah, right.
And within the Orkney Islands, because it's not one singular island, they call, the island that Kirkwall is on, which is kind of like the main town, that's considered the mainland. So if you move to Orkney and you're talking about the mainland, you're going to get some weird looks if you don't quickly adapt to talking about that island being the mainland, right?
Yeah.
Living in that kind of place,
like their own autonomous community,
exactly.
And they identify as Orcadian more so maybe than I guess the part of the UK or.
I mean, think about it, right? They were under Scandinavian rule for what, 600 years, 700 years. They've only been back with Scotland for like 400.
Yeah.
This is still like, of course, no one from this generation was there, but this is still new to the island, and it's definitely part of Scotland. Of course, you can feel that too, but
they have their unique identity.
They have a unique identity. They have a very certain spirit, and I think it takes a certain spirit to live there as well. A lot of the names, of course, our founder Magnus Jonsson. You can really hear that, in the name, as well as then Saint Magnus Cathedral as well. Saint Magnus Cathedral is again just it's a very royal name, Magnus, coming from the island. So it's that's really what the Viking heritage is. There's one other little piece actually. I think it's still there. A couple of our washbacks are actually still Siberian larch, which is the same materials that they used to make their longships from, which I think is really fun as well. It's not like we went out to try and do that. It's just how things worked out, but it's part of who they are. It's part of their history and heritage. It's very easy to look at a bottle and just be like, okay, throwing Viking stuff on there. What's that got to do with the brand? What's it got to do with the whiskey making? Yeah, of course, it's not a whole lot. Like, be honest. Other than, when you think about things like, peating your own malt, first of all, I mean, that's just the workload that you're taking on for yourself and that spirit that you have to do it. To do your own floor maltings, other distilleries can have a production team of 5. We have to have 20. And when I say 20 men, the majority of them are men, and it's not, a male-female divide. All women are welcome. It's just such a heavy, hard labor, intense role that so many people are in that we just haven't found as many people looking to apply. Actually, if I can I jump in with one other quick thing about Orkney, which I think is super unique. So I traveled to Orkney by ferry the one time I've been. They have an old game called Bar. It happens on Christmas Day and New Year's Day. And it's almost like capture the flag, but with really big, heavy, hard ball. And it's between the uppies and the doonies. The uppies were kind of the farmers, and the doonies were the fishermen from the town.
Doonies, okay.
As I went to the island by ferry, I'm a doonie. If you ever go to the island, however you first arrive to the island these days, if you arrive by plane, you're an uppie. And to my understanding, there's pretty much no rules, and it's all the stores will just get boarded up. The windows will get because it is a
battle royale.
You basically imagine like a massive rugby scrum, then take an entire island and turn it into the rugby scrum with no rules to get that ball to the other side. And it's I've only seen pictures. I've not seen it. I've not been there when it's been going on. I really want to go and see it. I feel like it wouldn't be culturally appropriate for me as an Englishman to go and take part because I'm neither Scottish nor Acadian, although part of me would like to. But I was told that they did used to have a men's competition, a women's competition. They said that they had to stop the women's one because it got so violent. And they were finding hair in the streets for kind of like weeks, and they're like, it's getting too much.
As a total side note, does anybody here watch that show? I think it was on History Channel, The Viking. Did you watch that? Have you ever watched that, James? That show, Viking?
I've not seen it.
No, you gotta watch it. You gotta watch it. Does anybody else out there watch this show? It's just so good. I mean, it's on Amazon, but when we're talking about Viking history, it's supposed to be sort of historically accurate, but you're talking about some women in the Viking world were seen pretty much on the same level as men. They fought. They fought. They were these shield maidens. They weren't they weren't pushovers, right? So they were warriors in this, and you guys have Valkyrie, right? I believe an expression, which is also a female Viking warrior. So just kind of talk about when you're talking about the women's component got a little bit too rough. It's a unique place. Get the opportunity to go, just go. Yeah. And so it's so interesting because I also read that I think 1 in 3 people have like a Viking lineage or Viking DNA in them.
Like again, that's what I mean. Like just pretty much Scandinavian, because as you said, it's just like this closed. I think that Ryan was in and said, think about people in Hawaii, and there's I know this it's the same but different, where you've got Hawaiians, and then you've got Hawaiians, and then but even within those different, you've got these multiple layers of this. When you go to Orkney, it's just Orkney and it's just Orcadians. I'm gonna catch up on some of these comments here. Bob, we'll get address this later, but Bob says, how do we get your single cast bottlings? Jason comments, this overlay is lit. Ryan says, enjoying the 18 year right now. There are some Northern European distilleries. Yeah.
Oh, Jeff says there are lots of seals over there.
Yeah. So lots of seals, and Jeff will know this because we saw each other this week as well. The Scapa Flow was a very big, important naval place between the Germans, between the Brits, and so anybody, like a lot of people know Orkney and know the Scapa Flow very well if they're divers and they're into doing like salvage or wreck diving. So we'll speak a little bit more about some animals when we speak about peat, but we have puffins, we have seals, we have a number of endangered birds and wildlife that
I'm sure
a lot of people will come just to see the birds.
Bob did say that there is a single malt distillery in Iceland. So it isn't. So that would be the more north for a whiskey distillery. Maybe it was north whiskey distillery, but Sharon says, with the ratio of men to women, maybe it's the place to move to find a good guy. That's funny. The Celts also have female warriors. I'm trying to get a single. And Ryan says, I'm trying to get a single cask in PA. Yep, there you go. And then, Ryan, I guess Ryan. Oh, yeah, Ryan's on. Okay, hey, Ryan. How's it going? Ryan's talking about
email to Ryan.
Yeah, if anybody's in PA, Ryan's on the stream right now. Email. Ryan just put his email up there. he'll get us. He'll get you your single casks. You know, if you're in
Yeah, he's offering to personally drive out to you wherever you are in the United States, and he's going to bring it. Thank you, Ryan.
You have to buy a case or more for the personal delivery. All right. So yeah. So let's take a look at this still picture. This our pictures here.
Yeah.
Here is the front door, Highland Park Distillery, and you know, so it is kind of a little hard to say, but is on the very top it says EST 1798. So let's talk about a little bit about the history. You did mention the Magnus, you know, Magnus. There's the names Robertson. You know, how did any of these people, or how did Magnus and you know, who was the founder, and what is the significance of 1792? Because I think Magnus was distilling before 1798.
Yeah.
As a listed distiller, right? And it's funny that he was also a holy man, if you will. And so you know, they call it water of life, you know. So you know, the people in the, you know, holy men made water of life. That's, you know, the way it was, right?
Yeah.
Even if it was illicitly, it was because he was, you know, even if it was illicitly, it's it's okay because he was it was sanctioned by the big man himself upstairs.
I mean, you know, as you say, it's eau de vie, it's aqua vitae, it is the water of life. Yes, was the church preaching that? No. Was it illegal? Yes. But you know, there's always interesting intersections between churches and distillation, and you know, I've seen so many respects, right? I mean, for just centuries, the safeguarders of like all alchemical knowledge and distillation were often, you know, monks or friars, or you know, and of course, you know, Magnus was not. As we understand it, you can take it as we understand it, or as legend goes, or as absolute reality, and I'll let you decide. No. So Magnus Jonsson is our forebear. Happy Father's Day to everybody again, if you're a dad out there. And our father is Magnus Jonsson, and he was on this land called the High Park. It's kind of it sits between Kirkwall and Holm on the island on the mainland of Orkney. And he's illicit distilling. You know, I've heard this both ways around. I've heard that 1798 is when he's caught for the first time. And I've also heard that 1798 is when he starts distilling on the site. Whichever way it is, you know, it's just pernickety little detail at this point. We know that he is distilling at that site in 1798, if not considerably earlier. And chances are that, you know, of course, just the buildings we see there, that comes quite a bit later. Really, what he'll have been in is kind of a bothy, which is a kind of like if you imagine a little cottage probably without windows, probably maybe with a door, you know, just basically like a very rudimentary house or building, probably with a big stack of peat next to it that was the size of the house. I mean, on Orkney, there's no trees. I mentioned that big wind from before, so you know that the guy, out of, you know, necessity. Actually, as I understand it, we have had trees. There were trees on Orkney, but it was up until the last ice age. So it's been a minute since we've had trees in Orkney, and so he's up there, and he has a still. Of course, illicit distilling. I mean, it's going to be a pack down still, right? We're not. You know, we're taking something very rough and ready.
We're not talking about you know, shiny new copper stills here. We're talking about, you know, essentially what we in the U.S. would think of as moonshiners, right? So these are, you know, maybe you have like, I don't know, 50 to 100 gallons of, you know, still capacity, and something you could probably, you know, take away with you and carry and then put together, break
it down.
Exactly. You break it down, then you hide it.
And you know, to that end, you know, of course, we have wonderful stories of the ways and places in which he's hid it. You know, we've heard of the whiskey being stored in the cathedral. In some of, you know, we've heard of the still being held in the pulpit. We've heard of, you know, casks being laid down, and of course, you know, especially at that time, you know, when we think about laying down in a cask, I mean, a lot of it really is just, you know, you need to store it in something, and a cask is what's going to be available at the time, right? You know, we weren't shipping sherry in bottles. We were shipping sherry by the cask to the pub, and then you'd crack it open and then it's empty. So we're he's a butcher by day. He's a beadler, which is also this kind of like priest assistant, if you like, and then an illicit distiller by night. And the island really does have obviously a history of kind of contraband and activities, honestly, just left over from the Vikings as well. Treacherous waterways, very difficult for people to get to. So why wouldn't they be doing this on the island? And of course, any time before 1824 or 1823, I suppose, it's a period of time when the Brits are obviously, or the English are taxing so heavily. It's just way more lucrative for everybody to get a slap on the wrist, pay a fine, or just not get caught and get back to it. So he definitely falls into that side of things. Location's great.
So interesting. So just to repeat that again, he's a butcher. He's a priest.
Yeah, it's like a beadler, which is like a priest assistant.
Preach like a pastor or pastor's assistant. And he's an illicit distiller, so it's kind of like a jack of all trades, if you will.
it's the triple win, it's just winning all around. And of course, he's the place he's living is great. It was called High Park, or the area was called the High Park, and this particular location, when you visit the distillery, you'll see you can look behind you to the Scapa Flow. You can look down into the town of Kirkwall. You get this really great kind of like not 360 because of a couple of hills, but kind of a full panorama of what's going on. I mean, if you're going to be making whiskey illegally, you want to know two things: you want to know where your customers are, and you want to know where the excise man is. So it was kind of a perfect spot
place,
for him, really.
Right?
Say again.
Perfect place, So the islands, historically, why would you go and distill on islands or places like Isla, right? Because you see the excise men coming on a boat, because they have to get on the boat, and you could see them a mile away. And then you pack up your still and you get out of there.
Yeah. And so his name is Magnus Jonsson, and we know that he's also caught in 1813. In 1813, this is where it gets interesting, because he's kind of caught by the excise men. As I understand it, he was basically given an option to like sell his operation, if you like, which was illegal. So how this works, I don't really know. And effectively, like the arresting officer, John Robertson, or like a syndicate around John Robertson, kind of takes control of it. But by the time we get to like 1826, a distillery has been built, or like more of an actual, rather than just again this kind of shanty cottage bothy thing. Actual bricks, mortar being laid down, stills being put in place, a much more permanent structures built on the site. And then by 1826, again, 1823 legislation passes, right? 1826, we're still one of those first distilleries to say, yes, it's better to just take that legal license now. And so we now have it, but it does leave that gap where you're thinking, okay, so someone related to the excise person takes over it. Still not registered. So it's this weird gray area of just, okay, I guess this is how it goes. I mean, I guess you've got the law on your side, but then you're breaking the law by doing it. So it's just kind of got this wonderful, weird history of kind of, making spirit on the site. And then so then it really becomes a family business for quite a while. A number of people, it basically changes hands a number of times, and then you start to see these bigger names coming through, right? People, the grants start to come through, that have looked after places like Glenlivet and other things.
So owners of Glenlivet used to own Highland Park as well. And then later on, Highland Distillers. And then Edrington and whatnot. And Edrington, who currently owns it, had also had a lot more distilleries on, Tamdu was one of them, right?
At one point, Bruno Harbin, we were working with. We have a history of working with a number of different distilleries as well.
And Edrington, also owns Famous Grouse. Naked Grouse is also one of your expressions, which also has a Highland Park in it. Glenrothes, Highland Park, Macallan, great blended malt whiskey as well from the Edrington company. yeah, the huge lots of history there. And then 1826, I believe, is when officially got that license. And it was kind of like Magnus, and people that arrested him owned it also, and and people that bought it.
Again, by that point, I think that Magnus is no longer even in the picture anymore. I mean, he's effectively ousted.
It was like a hostile takeover kind of thing.
He's ousted by people who then continue the illegal operation until it becomes legal. It's remarkable.
Poor butcher, and deacon. Yeah, deacon I think is the person. Yeah, somebody said use the word deacon here. Somebody says, could you describe the Scapa flow? What is that? And then, can you say more about the relationship between Highland Park and the Scapa distilleries? Is there really? Yeah, there you go. You want to add anything about that?
It's a small island. They're all friends. Yeah. There's no relationship other than just the personal relationships that people have.
Obviously not the same owners or anything.
No. Yeah. So no real relationship at influence. No relationship other than just the cordiality and just kinsmanship of living on the same island, both being distilleries. There's a lot of love for what the other does. They are pretty non-competitive distilleries in obviously style and what they do. But yeah, the Scapa flow, as I understand, it's a very treacherous area of waters, just because again it's kind of the meeting point of two oceans. So you have these very, very strange currents that will happen. Again, I'm not an oceanographer. The level of my oceanography is understanding how to surf and how a wave forms. That's as far as I get to it. But I think it's because we've got two oceans kind of meeting at the same point. It is a rather small, there's a lot of small little ruts of land that stick up, very, very rocky. And I think it's very easy for you to get knocked over a bit to a side by a current or something. And you could really start just hitting a lot. I think there's just a lot. I think there's a lot to hit. And I think there's a lot of unpredictable water. And then, of course, you've got these 100-mile-an-hour winds. The one time that I've been to that island, I camped overnight. I was cycling in the day. It was remarkably not windy. And, the usual joke about Orkney is that it's so windy. It doesn't rain down. It doesn't rain sideways. It rains upwards because it's so windy. So Scapa flow, crazy water currents, a huge amount of wind, and then a lot of just dark rock. And you imagine, again, you're trying to go through there in 16 hours of basically darkness. Good luck, It's So that's what I know of the Scapa flow.
I just want to throw this little map on, just so people can kind of get this, get oriented in terms of the location. There's Highland Park all the way up there. Part of so it's a Highland part of the Highland region, quote unquote. But obviously it's unique and on the island, right? Because there's no island category officially.
It's called we don't call, we're not a Highland Scotch, we are an island Scotch. To your point, Jura is an island, Talisker is an island. Of course, we do not taste anything like those guys. They don't taste anything like us. Vice versa, we all love what everyone else does.
From place to place,
the Highland is a misnomer in this place. Highland is a misnomer in this situation where originally it was called the High Park. But, High Park or Highland, land of high elevation park. Either which way, It
was just kind of a coincidence, right? It really has no relationship with Highland.
Nothing to do with the Highland region of Scotland, which I appreciate. If you're looking at the label, could be a confusing thing. It'd be like buying a bottle of wine called butter and it's got
High Park area.
That's it.
They don't involve Highland Park. Yep. So that's a little interesting tidbit there. And let me just bring back the PowerPoint here. All right, so this front distillery. Well, love that kind of old architecture. You got the obvious stones. You see the cobblestones there. It's like very picturesque.
Yeah, you can see the Charles. You can see the Charles Doig. I mean, it isn't a pagoda.
Ventilator over there. Yep.
We call them pagodas. They're not pagodas. But the Charles Doig pagoda. One of the first things that you're confronted by actually there is you can see the basically behind the stills. So the shell condenser for cooling on the right hand side. So you walk through the gates. After you've looked at the beautiful pagoda, the first thing you're confronted with is basically the rear side of the still house, right?
Yep. Yep. The Doig ventilator has become so iconic that some distilleries will install a pagoda or Doig ventilator, even though it has no just for aesthetics. Just for aesthetics, So distillers will put it up there. It's supposed to be for the kiln, right? It's supposed to be connected to the kiln.
Yeah, it's
kiln, and, it's supposed to be designed in a way
that airflow through, right?
Yeah.
The funny thing is, of course, is that England has its own style of this, or sorry, the UK has its own style of this, and it's that little rotating thing that you'll find on the top of a chimney.
Yeah,
I think that this actually came back from. This is actually an American influence, if I'm not mistaken. I think that he brought this back from America. Probably, I guess, from Kentucky. He brought back this as like a tool for keeping things. Sorry, it might not have been in whiskey production; it was in something else. But it's actually really an American import.
If anybody wants to look up Doig, Charles Doig, 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 Doi. Oh, there you go. Yep, Doig, Doig. And it's become so iconic that he made so many distilleries, and he implemented this. This is like the signature design. So it's just become so iconic that, like I said, even, distilleries in Taiwan, which don't have a kiln, and places who don't have a kiln, they still put it up there just because it's so iconic. So here we go. We have a bigger close up, but, I think the Highland Park, these pagodas, the Doig ventilators here, have become so iconic and just so, they just look so good. There's just handsome pieces here.
Yeah.
And you have some this picture here with this 1962, 1924, 1907.
Yeah. I've got no idea what. No, I'm good. I'm joking. So 1998. It's just the slowest distillery ever built. Just very slow in adding new bricks. So 1798 we've already covered, right? We're talking about really, Magnus Jönsson distilling in the place. Of course, doesn't look like this. 1907 is our old kiln that we still there, still running. That's the old kiln, one of two. 1924 is the new kiln. So our new kiln is just about to become 100 soon. I wonder if we'll have a nice little celebration of that. The old kiln is definitely over that. So, the height of modern technology, no expense spared when it comes to our kilns, but, it's not broken. They work wonderfully well. And so we're not, it'll be a sad day if we ever have to replace one of those kilns, because, when we've been using them for 100 years, it's such a, it will actually make me cry. And I don't work at the distillery, but it will make me cry for one of those kilns.
Oh yeah, sure.
And then 1962, this is when we expanded from a whopping 2 stills to 4.
There you go. Under the management of James Grant, I believe, right?
This is when we're during that stint of time.
Yep. When the owner of Glenlivet owned Highland Park, right?
Let me think about this, because I think James Grant did it in the 1890s. So
no, James Smith? Is it Smith or Grant? I can't remember.
Honestly, I'm at that time. I don't know who's. I know that Grant's considerably earlier. He was definitely drinking the water of life if it was him. And anyone knows, Ryan? If you know, I off the top of my head do not know, but can find out if we want to know.
Yeah. But all right. Let's take a look at the next one here. I actually have it written down here somewhere in my notes, but we'll come back to that. Here we go. We have more angles here. The new kiln here. I guess you have some Coke over here, right? Is this Coke here?
Coke. So for everyone, just so I'm sure a lot of you do know what Coke is, but Coke really is, I guess, kind of like a refined or processed coal, if you like, where we basically get rid of all of the impurities, all of this. When you use as a fuel source, it will burn hot, and it will it's very clean. You don't get vapors, fumes, chemicals, anything else. It's it's very, very clean burning fuel. And so again, we'll get to the peating process, but we'll start with peat, and then we'll move into coking after that, because we're once we've hit the kind of ppm that we're looking for, which again we'll get to when we get to that. Yeah.
So it's not a heavy contributor of, so some people think, oh, if you're using coal or things like that, you're getting more of that smoke and whatnot. So, this, just kind of make it clear to people, so this is not a major contributor in terms of the phenols that's in the barley, because they're using coke. And, in some places you just use natural gas, or things to kiln. But in this case, Park chooses to use coke as a fuel source for the kilning process, right? Which is kind of unique in itself too, Yeah,
I mean, we're just drying the peat, right? We're drying the peat, but of course, because we're peating, we're drying it whilst flavoring it, and then the coal, the coke, really, I guess, does two things. Peat burns. We'll get to that. Let's get to that. We'll get to the peat when we get there.
The peat, and then you use the coke to finish the process.
We'll jump back in.
Yeah. So somebody says here, the Grant's own Glenfiddich. Yes, Will and Grandsons. So Will and Grandsons also, is tied with Edrington in certain ways as well.
Yeah.
And but you guys can look up that relationship on your own. The maltings. It's a little sign here. Yeah. Very unique here. Highland Park, one of only a handful of distilleries that are actually doing your own traditional floor maltings here. Yeah. Here's the malting floor. Have you been able to, go in there and shovel up a bit yourself?
I didn't do it myself. The most I did was pick up a handful, kind of stick a few in my pocket for later, just to look at it in my own time. But you'll see,
right?
There's a child, Yeah, so you'll see that there, that the shield for just pushing everything over. It is hand turned. It's raked. It is hand turned. We have to do this every 8 hours. We do have a machine as well, and it's that crazy looking contraption. That you push.
Yeah, it's I want to relate it to us in America, maybe pushing like a lawnmower or something like that.
Kind of. It's almost like a lawnmower combine harvester, right? Like if there's a really
it's the malt. Yeah. I want to say this, shoving the malt is almost, because I want to say, what can people relate to? Like if you shovel in America, we do landscaping, you shovel mulch.
Sure.
Mulch.
Yeah.
Can you imagine shoving a whole room of mulch? Everybody. It's intensive. It's intense.
Yeah, it is. And this is part of why we don't just have 5 people in the production team. We've got 20, because the floor maltings do take a huge amount. And again, that machine, when we say that, it is not the kind of machine. Look at the room. It's not the kind of machine where you come in and push a button and then the machine does something. No. You're walking behind the thing. You do a bit more, I guess. You will achieve a bit more in one go, but it's probably a lot more work. Like that machine looks pretty archaic and tough to use. But really, of course, the floor malting is super important for. So about 20% of what we do is floor malted, like with our peat, right? Basically, what we floor malt is what we peat. Yeah. And we have no interest in saying goodbye to this process.
Yeah.
It's up to everyone to take from this what they will. We get the remainder of our barley, or our malted barley, coming from Simpsons, and of course, the level of control and precision that they have for each individual grain is just mind-boggling. Yeah. How far down into each single grain you can get. Our level of technology here is a series of thermometers throughout the room and the floor. Yeah. Can you click on by one more for me?
Yep. And just to kind of touch on that as well. If you guys, we're not going to talk too much about it, but look up commercial maltsters, right? And then so very, very different operation than floor malting and whatnot. So and this is exactly what James was talking about, precision, right? And then so they're churning out tons and tons of malt for the entire, several Port Ellen maltings, the Simpsons, these people, they're professionals, and precision is what is their job.
Yeah. It's what everyone's paying for from them, right? It's exactly what they want to get from it. Now, for us, this is heritage, this is history, and for me, it's romance, because again, we turn it because it's going to start getting warm. As it starts to germinate, as we start to have some of that, the endosperm kind of like doing its thing, it's generating heat. So we need to cool it down. So we hand turn it every 8 hours, rain or shine, day or night, whenever it's happening. And, again, thermometers, our second big piece in our arsenal for controlling this is those windows. We can, with those windows, open them.
Those are air conditioners. Well, you can see a little bit better here.
Yeah.
But there is some video of Highland Park maltings, and they're talking about, how do you guys control the temperature in here? It says, the windows.
We open and close the windows.
Windows, yep.
But it's compared to other places, think of other islands, I do get great amounts of salinity in Highland Park in a very balanced way. And part of that is, we are malting on the island, we're floor malting on the island, and we can control the temperature of the room by opening the windows.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that we've got like lashes of salt going all over the grain in the room. Like, don't get me wrong, it's not something crazy and intense, but again, it's part of that geography. It's part of who we are, what we are, and what we're about. You wouldn't be able to kind of like maintain that temperature if you were, in Kentucky or something like that in the dead of summer or something like that, right? So no. Closed off, air conditioning.
That's unique to opening up the windows, just because we talked about that temperature fluctuations just is not as high, right?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
And here we go. Here it looks like we got some Coke here again, and then we have some. This is Pete over here on the right,
Yeah. So a little bit back into the geography, I guess, and then the kilning side of things. So obviously, after we've malted, it's basically taken by an elevator up to the perforated floor above our kilns, right? Which basically, think of walking through the city that maybe has a subway and those very tight air vents that let air out. It's basically that, just a lot finer, so that the smoke can come through it. Orkney peat is unique. There's no trees on the island of Orkney, again, at least not since the last ice age. There's no trees in the peat. You get less lignin. You get very different flavors coming through from the peat.
Here's a close up of the peat here, right?
Yep, there you go. And of course, I know everyone knows this, but peat basically halfway to becoming coal, decomposed, compressed, vegetated, greens. And for us, what it is it's pretty much exclusively heather and sphagnum moss. That's pretty much all it is, right? Of course, so, peat, just for people to understand, being English, I think of this and I didn't realize just how much it's shaped, there's the swallow's back, how much it's shaped the landscape of England. Peat has been like such a socially important fuel source, because you could get to, like, it was on the commons of the land, you could have access to it no matter how wealthy or how poor you were. Obviously, the wealthy people had either coal or they had, wood and things like this to burn. But the impoverished living in the country had common lands from which they could harvest their own peat. And so, old cottages, you look at the pictures.
It's how you survive winters. I mean, it's such, it's like you freeze to death otherwise, if you're in the Highlands of Scotland, and how would you cook or everything. It's such an integral thing, even down in England,
same thing. So like the Norfolk Broads, it's these big like flat areas. It's actually because it was so heavily peat, mined, if you like, or harvested during the medieval period. It's a really, really heritage rich fuel source. Okay. Now, it is of course a fossil fuel, or halfway to becoming a fossil fuel. So there are mindfulness considerations when it comes to harvesting it as well. We never harvest anywhere near the amount that we're allowed. And I know that Marie Stanton, who's our distillery manager, has done a number of things since she joined the team to really find ways to get more peat into the malt so that we have to peat less, right? The more that we can capture the same types of phenols, really making sure we've got the same glycols and same stringols coming through and things like that.
Yeah.
The less peat we can use to do that, which could be down to the grain that we use, the size of the grain, or how humid or not humid, or just lots of little things to do with it. We can control this with. But there's two really exciting things that are happening as well. One is that we're both we're kind of like rehabilitating the land that we're harvesting from, in the sense that we have to cut off this leather of heather, this level of heather every year that we go to harvest. We've been for a number of years now putting the heather back down. So we will cut our top layer and replace it or displace it, and then we'll bring it all back so that there's still vegetation and those heather roots can get back down into the soil again and do what they do. Yeah. And we actually had I think she was from St Andrews in Scotland, this student came up and did some incredible work with like trying to rebuild and manage the waterbed there as well, right? By basically creating like a series of mini dams and mini ponds to try and encourage the sphagnum moss to grow and continue growing. And because one risk once you start harvesting is you end up with very dry peat. Yeah. Or we typically have the opposite issue where it's usually too wet. Sometimes it's too dry, but it's usually too wet. So we'll leave it for a few weeks out on the moor, and then bring it back. So anyway, May and June, that's when we harvest. We don't use extrusion, machines. I know that we do use machinery. It's not the whole team out there with peat cutters doing this all by hand.
No.
But one of the great things about that actually is that we also have a lot of birds that again are endangered have actually started coming back. If we were to walk up there with our and doing it all by hand, peat cutting, the birds would go and they wouldn't be back. If we go up there with like a JCB or a digger, they're fine and they stay. So we've managed to find this nice thing, and we don't use extrusion machine, like they do in Isla, right? That extrusion machine where it comes out like a sausage of dry peat.
Extrusion. You guys can look that up. But I thought, so using the extrusion machine, I thought was better in terms of the sustainability. So I've heard.
So
because you're not really cutting, just an entire piece off. You're kind of just, getting that little sausage in there. You're getting that little tube of peat, and then it'll all just kind of mix back together again. So.
I like it as an idea. I don't know enough about it. I eventually just imagine big sinkholes like popping up. Eventually, you can't keep digging from underneath, and it's like eventually anyway. But
everybody can go Google that. I mean, that's a whole other topic. I mean, peat in itself is such a I think unsung hero among whiskey, because we talk about whiskey, but this peating, and then you even talked about the sustainability of peat and whatnot. I mean, currently, I believe the peating that you guys are using will last another roughly 300 years, but you guys are talking about sustainability now, but this peat, it took like 1,000 years to get here already.
I mean, what we're using is like 3,000 to 5,000. It's So I don't know. So I mean, the sustainability is definitely a conversation that needs to be had, and I commend that the Scotch whiskey industry is actually looking into this and exploring sustainability and things like that. And you're talking about being more efficient with the peat and whatnot, because it is a precious commodity. Because I mean, I don't know, it may not affect us, but in our great grandkids, may not have peat to in their whiskey anymore. I don't know. It's such a sad thing to think, right? So, no, it's true. It's true.
With so many techniques, like you were saying, traditional cutting, machine, extrusion, all that stuff, right?
Yep.
So interesting.
Nice thing for us with the extrusion as well. Or not using the extrusion. Extrusion typically leads to pretty dry peat. and so it'll burn a bit hotter and quicker, but it's, you know, what we're looking for is we're looking for this nice, slow, gentle smolder. So, you know,
Yeah.
4 weeks or so, drying it out, we'll bring it back to the distillery, and then it's going to be used. And, you know, we're really pulling from 3 different layers, you know, and the top layer is going to be that low, slow smolder. It's going to be the most like heather roots, you know, richest. Anybody that you heard this, like, it sounds like once upon a time, quite a while ago in our history, we may have even thrown bits of heather and things like that into the kiln. None of that happens now. We just use peat and coke. We don't, you know, we're not putting flowers into it or heather and things like that.
Yeah.
But that very top layer,
little note here, you can even see that, you know, we'll just make this picture significant. Peat 10 hours.
Right. So, and that is like,
I thought you guys peat longer than that.
We do when we do, but there's the photo. I was there. I took the photo. So, you know, who knows? Maybe that was one of the times that we had some tartan barley upstairs, and that's what we'd been peating. And, you know, I know that they're smaller grains, and that they'll the husk of it will actually accept the peat more readily. So maybe, you know, maybe they were playing with something. But you're right. Normally we'll peat for more like 18 hours.
Yeah.
And then we'll switch it on to coke. Like the 18 hours usually is around about like 60 degrees. That's the kind of temperature we're looking for with the peat as we're smoldering it. And again, 60 degrees. I mean, 100 is boiling. 60 degrees Celsius is not a whole lot.
No.
It's all about that rich, you know, smoke we're looking for. And you know, for Highland Park, part of it is because only 20% of what's going into the actual whiskey is peated. The other part is just because of the actual type of peat we're using. You know, we're doing it for 18 hours, and then after that part, we'll switch to coke, which is going to bring us up to more like 65 degrees just to really finish off the drying process. Yeah. So that's kind of what's happening there.
And I think the kilning and the peating that you guys do in house, you guys peat, you know, to like a 20 ppm roughly, right?
Yeah. So it's higher than that.
With the Simpson malt, right?
Yeah. So it's higher than that. We're getting closer to like, I think 38 to 43 for like the actual malt part, right? But the because 20% of it is only 20% of it is going in with the Simpsons malt. Then by the time that we hit new make, you know, we're only talking like 2 to 3. Yeah. But, you know,
what's the ppm level? I mean, at the time of mixing of the malt, have you guys ever?
It's still, yeah. So I mean, as I understand it, like how we perceive, you know, again, glycols, phenols, creosols, all these different, you know, like typical smoke elements changes as it ages, but the actual peat particles does not.
Yeah.
So by the time that we come to blend,
light peat, you know.
Yeah, by the time we come to blend, it's still the same. It's like 2 to 3%.
Yeah.
But of course, you know, we know this, right? You know, you taste a 12-year and you taste a 50-year, just peat changes. Our perception of it changes. Or, you know, not only does it change, the rest of the cask influence really changes, right? So, you know, we're left with a different cocktail at the end. So you're going to taste it in a very different way.
And there's so many ways to test peat for, you know, and I want, you know, it's almost kind of, we're going down another rabbit hole here, but there's 2 ways of there's a few ways of testing peat. You know, mostly the industry tests at colorimetry versus HPLC, which some other, you know, so HPLC you'll be able to test at, you know, some distilleries where you want to show higher ppm content, you may use HPLC as a testing method, but it's a much more expensive, you know, intense process. But, you know, colorimetry is most what, you know, most distilleries will use. So it's really, you know, so I think people get caught up on the ppm thing, and then I think the industry really, if you go and ask any expert, you'll just say, you know, it's just really just you know, you have certain levels like high, medium, low peat, right? And then so within this range is really kind of like a low peating thing, you know, and people get really caught up on the ppm thing, but it's really so what is it? Relative, you know, it's really so relative.
Yeah.
But Highland Park is going,
you know,
a lower peat. They're not trying to. You guys aren't trying to do peat
Yeah.
monsters.
No, and really, I think it works very well for us as well. I mean, this is something that I'm sure everyone in the conversation knows. Everyone in the chat, anyone that's ever had Highland Park knows this. Highland Park produces such a ludicrously well balanced single malt.
Yeah.
So many times, even now that I'm so used to tasting it, that I still get caught off guard and just think, how is this not like at least a vatted malt? Just the balance between smoke, those like dried fruit notes, salinity, just everything is in such a perfect harmony. And that's why we peat to the level we do. That's why we utilize it the way we do. And we find that really does pay, is the best way for us to utilize the peat that we have. You mentioned obviously the ways in which you can test your peat levels.
Yeah.
We do know that people are capable of, it is possible in a lab to tell you where your peat was probably from, what depth it probably was, or like age it probably was, right? I mean, like this is all possible from what we'll find. But none of that really matters because we have our own peat skills. It's called harvesting more. Yeah.
So, go ahead. So peat will degrade, So from the time you peat right off the kiln, versus just even transporting that peated malt from the maltings to the distillery, it'll change. So for example, Japan gets peated malt from the UK, and by the time it leaves the UK and arrives in Japan, it may be X ppms in UK when they malt it, but just even taking that month and a half or 2 months to get to Japan, that ppm also degrades over time. So, I mean, I can talk another like 2 hours on peat, but
that's a whole other episode.
But Ryan, so Ryan hits it right on the nail right on the head. HP does a great job balancing the peat versus the sweet. The Sherry Season Cask balances out so well, and I think that's one thing that's amazing about Highland Park, because peat doesn't have to be overwhelming, and there's a sense of refinement, and there's this great balance that can be achieved, and this this just a special way of treating this peat, and I think that's what Highland Park does really well in terms of balance and getting, just expressing it just a little bit, just kind of like a kiss of peat, which is just really accentuates, really accents that whiskey so well,
Yeah.
Ted
that's our peating. Those are our kilns.
Oh, sorry about that. Yep. No, go ahead. Yep. And then here it says peat 11 hours, right? So
obviously,
anywhere from 11.
I've seen that.
Go ahead. Sorry.
I think typically, that look delays. I think it's up to the 18 hours. I think is like really the typical. My photos are the photos that I took when I was there. It wasn't a day that we were actually peating when I was there, unfortunately. One other thing I was going to say, you can see actually in the thing as well in the kiln, we do still make use of a pallet crate to get it going with some newspaper under the bottom. I mean, again, we're talking about like the heights of technology here, but it's not broken. It produces exactly what we want.
Yeah, and you can see that pallet crate there with the newspaper there, like Yep. How long? So this peat, how long do you know how long it's dried out? Put out to dry, from cutting and into the kiln.
So I mean, we're leaving it down at Hobbyster for I think between 2 to 4 weeks, depending on how wet it is or is not. I know that in 2017 or 2018, Marie was telling me that it was so dry that year, which seems unfathomable for Orkney, that we pretty much had to harvest, take it, use some of the top level from the previous year that was too wet, and hose it down a little bit before, we could get to here. And actually, now that I think about it, just I guess we'll get to it when we talk about like processing later on. But we oh no, we'll cover it when we get to mashing. I'll wait. And there's one of the swallows. So every year the distilleries, the kilns people really do get excited when the swallows come back to the island. And so I think in one of the pictures you might see that they always write on the kiln every year the day they get back. There's a little smiley face on it. It's just they're a family. It's
I love
part of the extended family.
I think that's what I love about speaking with somebody like yourself and brand ambassadors or at the distillery and whatnot. It's just it's these little things that you just don't read about. You can read all day, which I have sometimes, but you don't read about these little things, that just makes it's a romance. It's very romantic. It's
that's
how
why
can
for me,
you not be romantic if you love Scotch and you love something like Highland Park. It's just.
Yeah,
it's good stuff. Anyways, I'm getting emotional. I'm gonna start tearing up, in a little bit. Yeah. No, I'm just kidding. And here, this is the kilning process right here. So you got the malta here. You got the perforated floors at the bottom, right? The kiln at the top, the bottom there, and then which we saw. And so this is the malt being dried, obviously, right now. And you can see that smoke and coming up there, and the malting, also in terms of precision wise, malt can only, you're talking about efficiency. Malt can only take so much peat and phenols based on how wet or dry it is, right? So at some point, if the malt is too dry, it just won't accept
bouncing off.
Yeah. So in terms of temperature and the dryness of the malt and the weather and whatnot you were saying, right? The way the heat is, that's that all has to change, based on climate. It's not just a cookie cutter formula, so the kiln, the people at so it speaks to the art of the craft of whiskey making. You really can't just say, we're just going to do it this way and this is how we do it every single time.
Yeah, and you can really see it, right? I mean, you can see from the pictures that we've gone through so far. There's no computer. There's no
computers.
There's no computers.
It's really an art. It's an art.
Buildings. You'll see a couple of pictures coming up. Maybe I shouldn't have included them because you'll see. I did keep the soccer balls in here. Like you'll always see those soccer balls knocking around. We're one of those distilleries where it's very real. They're all buildings. It's a couple of steps on from being a farmhouse, basically.
Yeah.
And it's wonderful, and the history and heritage that it still produces, and it produces something. Again, it blows my mind. Yeah, it blows my mind.
Oh yeah. So there's this kiln, and then so let's talk about milling. So milling is also a science here too. You got the Porteous mill here.
This is a bit of a lie.
Okay, you don't actually have a picture of the grist here, but
yeah.
Beautiful machine. Beautiful piece of machinery. Tell us about it.
Yeah, this is a bit of a lie. I'm very sorry, guys. This is actually from the Glenrothes. It is a sister distillery, but it is the same mill that we're using. Say again?
Highland Park does use a Porteous mill, right?
We do also use a Porteous, which is why I used the picture. I just didn't take a picture of the one at Highland Park, so I threw it here so you guys can see it. So we're actually in Speyside for this picture, but this is the mill that we also use at Highland Park. Yeah. Porteous is one of those wonderful, wonderful brands that they did their job so well the first time around. They went out of business very quickly because they never broke down, and so no one ever bought another mill ever again. At least stills like a sacrificial process, right? I mean, the chemical reactions going on is a sacrificial process. So Forsyth, no. Shameless self-promotion. You're in the town of Glenrothes, and Forsyth, where our stills are coming from. That those stills are going to be replaced. They're going to have to continuously be fixed and replaced. This piece of kit never breaks, so they no longer exist. But yeah, the milling. What are we doing? We're taking it down to I think 70% of it is grist.
Yeah.
20% of it is going to be husk, and then we do end up with flour. The remainder of 10% is flour. but that's really what, I threw that in there just to talk about it. But Portsmouth Mill.
Yeah, milling, I think, is also well, I don't think it is a very important process of the whiskey making process. And you're talking about you need that ratio, good ratio of grist, which is kind of like the meal versus the husk versus the flour, because you can't have like all flour, and then it becomes like dough, and when you're mashing, right? So you need that husk to kind of you need that husk to work as a kind of like to keep the grist and the flour from all sticking together. So you really need a that good ratio of grist, husk, flour, whatnot, or else it just doesn't work, right?
Exactly.
And they can't, and the mill can't be, you can't work too hard, because then because it generates a lot of heat too. So then you're burning up the barley if it's cranking it at too fast. So so this is another one of those things. People can Google about milling and whiskey, and that's a whole nother thing. But this is cool that you guys, this Porteous mill, it's like a Cadillac of mill. It's just a beautiful piece of machinery.
It's a testament to that sense of, if it isn't broken, don't fix it. And I feel like Highland Park has a huge amount of that, right, between the kilns, between the floor maltings, and then this mill as well, and it's a thing, it's a thing.
Well, we have so here we're looking at these wooden washbacks here, right?
Oh, did I put that in front of the? Let's skip on. Oh yeah, we are. Sorry, we are. I was looking at the back. I was like, wait a minute, I missed the mash tun. I guess I just got the top part of the mash tun. My bad. So we are indeed looking at the washbacks. If you kick it back a couple of pictures and get back to that to the semi-lauter. Yeah. So right in the front there, you see the mash tun. It's the mash tun itself is like 11-ton capacity. We half fill it basically, or just over half fill it. It's like 6.4 to 6.6 tons of grist will go through a hopper, and then we actually within there. So our water source, which is something I was going to plan on getting back to. So we're pulling from the water source is called like the Crantit Spring. And it's a it's a hard water source. There's a lot of mineral content in there. There's a number of other distilleries. We're not the only distilleries to do that, but obviously the vast majority of distilleries that people think of off the top of their head are Speysides, and Speyside water typically coming down from the Cairngorms is going to be soft. So it's going to be very, very low in its mineral content. Highland Park, not the case. Very high in mineral content, we it does make a difference. I know that when there's high levels of calcium, that's going to impact the amylase process and things like this, and a lot of those enzymatic processes in the mash tun itself. So it plays a part. I'm not a scientist. I can't speak to the degree that it does, but it is a thing. So it comes from this. It comes from this water source. We basically had this a number of years ago. We had to buy this kind of like disused quarry, if you like, called Catty Maggie's Quarry, and so we kind of use that as a mini reservoir for the distillery. So water comes from Crantit Spring, will get held back in the Catty Maggie's Quarry, and then it will come down to the distillery from there. And so we're going to be using that when we're doing our malting. You need water in your malting process.
You guys using reverse osmosis RO, or you guys using distilled water, or is just the raw natural water, or just simple filtration?
So I know that it runs through a filter. It's used for steeping and mashing, but it's not used for filling or bottling. And again, and we'll get to the facts why it's not, for filling. We don't need it. We don't use it, and we'll get to that. That's another thing. But the water gets tested, and it gets tested on a daily basis. But I think, to my understanding, it basically is just filtered to get rid of any particulate in there, because there's no microbes, so it doesn't need to go through UVs. It doesn't need, just other kind of treatments. The water source is good. Doesn't need it. Very clean, pure source coming from there. The only thing that's different about it really is it's a hard water source. Again, I think that the mineral content plays
Yeah.
a part in that enzymatic process, but again, I can't tell you exactly how.
Yeah. I mean, that's really cool that you guys use a natural water source. I mean, Japanese whiskey makers are really big proponents on that natural water sources and things like that. And
Yeah,
natural water sources really only work if you're using it as a natural in its natural state, right? Like if you're using reverse osmosis, or if you're using distilled water.
Use distilled water, why not? At that point,
if you're in distilled water, it doesn't make the difference anymore, right? So those natural minerals and organics in there, really aid in the fermentation, because yeast also needs minerals and nutrients essentially.
Yep.
So it plays a little part. I mean, does maybe it makes that 5-10% of that flavor profile, but then that's what makes something unique like that, right?
Yeah. And even if even if it's not a detectable, even for the things that perhaps for our palates we might be able to detect on the other side, it is still the kind of thing that if you changed it, then what? This is how we do it. This is how we've always done it. So we kind of we don't know, and you and I don't know. Well, if we could swap this to and it'd be a wonderful thing to try. But if we did swap it out, and you didn't change anything else, because as you said, like when it comes to fermenting, it is the mineral content will play and will impact how that yeast is working, the enzymatic processes in there as well. So if we change the water source, the wash that we'll end up with would be different. That wort would be different. So then everything else will kick on different down the line.
Yeah. And people often talk about like older expressions of whiskey and whatnot, and how it tastes different from new expressions. And it's not just one thing that at one point all whiskey tasted different. It's a series of small changes over such a long period of time that makes whiskey different. The barley you use, the peat you use, the wooden washbacks versus stainless steel, the direct fire versus the steam coils, worm tubs, it's all those things that accumulate over time that changes, that makes a whiskey different ultimately, because it's a culmination of different things that change. And and at least in Park here, you guys are still trying to keep with that, the original process, your milling, your the water source, the wooden washback. I mean, some things you obviously do have to update in terms of technology and whatnot, of course. But, you guys are trying to stay as true as traditional to that as possible, right?
I mean, there's this amazing book, and it's under my bed. I'm not going to go get it. It's a reproduction book, I think from the 1920s. It's called Highland Park: A Good Foundation. And like we sell it on the distillery, website, and you can buy the distillery, and you could have it shipped to the States if you wanted. I've got a spare copy. When you get back to the States, I'll drive up and I'll bring you a copy. It's remarkable with Highland Park, because you look inside it and you read it, and what you're going to read is peat from Hobbister Moor, talking about the flavor of the peat. You're going to read about the floor maltings and the importance of the floor maltings. You're going to talk about cask. They're going to talk about cask harmonization. They're going to talk about, I think, sherry casks as well. And it's funny because I'm reading this. I'm like, it's 100 years on. I'm like,
yeah,
this is exactly our, this is exactly it. This is exactly what we do.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. And here we have the mashing process here. That's the barley being mashed here, left and right.
Yeah. So we'll, super quick for this. The actual mash itself, the bill is 80% unpeated coming from Simpsons, combined with 20%, which is our floor malted and peated. We're using Concerto. 1 half-filled mash tun is a washback. So each mash tun, if you like, is a washback, because we only fill it by half. So there's a bottleneck getting to the kiln, because there's 2 kilns and there's 4 floor maltings. Okay. So you hit this kind of like bottleneck, and then after that, once we get to this stage, it gets a bit better. So once we're getting to the mash tun, it's like, okay, mash tun, wash back, mash tun, wash back, mash tun, wash back.
Yeah.
And so, we're producing around about like 29,000 liters of wort each time, and then that's going straight into our 15-foot washbacks. I'm guessing, and I'm looking at the pictures, as we're going through. I'm guessing that what we're seeing on the left is maybe the underback. I guess.
Yeah.
I'm presuming that's the underback. I wasn't paying attention, to be honest.
Yeah. And so the mashing. So you guys using? Is it a quick mash? Is it a slow mash? You guys have a clear wort, cloudy wort?
Yeah. So we have a cloudy wort to the end. On the other side, it's cloudy. The actual time for the mash, I actually can't recall now that I think about it.
Yeah. Yeah, if it's a cloudy wort, then then it's a quicker mash.
Yeah,
right?
off the top of my head, I can't think, but it would make sense. So yes, it's a cloudy wort. Two, we're needing to get it off of, again. This is kind of like just on the other side of the bottleneck. We've got enough washbacks, but we need to get the malt out and moving as well. So it wouldn't surprise me just from a logistical standpoint, but do not quote me on it. That's me saying, actually, I don't know. I'm going to go find that out.
So cloudy. Yeah, I imagine it is a cloudy wort because Highland Park is going to be a little maltier instead of fruit forward. But here we go. We have here's the the fermentation happening here. We got the tell us what's happening here.
Yeah, so we've got 12. So we've got 12 washbacks. All wooden. Oregon pine, Douglas fir. Choose your, pick your poison. Call it whatever you want to call it. A couple of them are still Siberian larch that I mentioned. So again, introduced with the Viking longships. I've
How old are the Siberian? What is it? Siberian.
Yeah. So I think that the oldest ones probably around about 30 years is typically the length that we'll get out of a washback for the most part. So some of them are getting up there. We kind of like typically replacing. I think one a year is our current cycle at the moment. It does take a little bit longer for ferments in pine. I think that it can. Much like when you add water, like to my understanding, again, I like the exact depth of this. I don't know because by this point it's a scientist like who can speak at this point. But much like when you add water to alcohol, right? It does so many different things that you're like, oh, okay, well, I'm diluting it more, but now this is spiking up. Like it just has these like non-logical reactions that happen. And so with when you're fermenting in wood, I think that there's a little bit of that can happen because sometimes you can break down certain long chain molecules or compounds, but other times like different ones will stick around. So it is very different than aging in stainless steel.
Absolutely.
The people that use stainless steel will say does nothing, means nothing. It's a load of rubbish.
They have to say that.
Of course. And I respect them. And disagree with them for our distillery. I do believe, just as we'd said before, if we did change the water source, it might seem so minute, but the implications for further down the road could potentially grow in such big ways without making a series of tweaks along the way.
Yeah, like I was saying, it's not just one thing that changes whiskey. It's a culmination of different things. So if you guys went from wooden to stainless steel, you change the water source, you change the barley, you change the yeast and stuff like that. Little by little, the whiskey changes over time. And, and sometimes being just, being a stickler for not changing something, is what makes something good, Some people say, "Oh, hey, why not be more, contemporary, whatnot?" But that's not, sometimes that could be to a whiskey's detriment, right? So.
Right, and kind of like you say with making those kinds of choices and changes, like Marie was working on trying to find ways to use less peat to peat the barley, but that's in our own, that's a preservation, self-interest thing, right? I mean, we do not want to use more than we need to. If we can make a tweak that we can capture more of the peat, that means that maybe we can use even less of that in our actual mash whilst retaining the same flavor profile. That's the thing. But, all of us, and, I say us, I don't have the privilege of being there to make the whiskey. I just get the privilege of tasting it and of talking about it. But, they're not making their whiskey for today. They're obviously the current protectorate. They're the current stewards for the future. And so exactly to your point, the second that they start making these decisions today, that's great. And, it's perfect that maybe when you're doing all of your science tests off of the stills, they're like, oh, it's coming off the same level of all these compounds I'm looking for. That's great. Let's wait for 30 more years and see if that 30-year-old is coming out the same. And I hope it is, but like to your point, every time you make these little changes, it changes. Could be for the better, could be for the worse. It's so subjective, who knows? But for us, we're still using floor maltings. We're still using our peat. We're using 100-year-old kilns. We're not looking to change. The most drastic change that we've had is the bottle shape, size, and branding. Fine, that's, I know arguably that changes the flavor because the first sip is with the eyes, but not really compared to the intrinsic character of the whiskey, right? So, we love them. They've, they were used, I believe, as bathtubs during one of the war efforts. I think some soldiers were jumping in and using them to clean off.
Really? Okay.
Is that
a fact or?
I mean, that was more than 30 years ago, so they've probably been replaced since then. So I don't think we need to worry about it.
Yeah. So in the picture also here, looks like a gentleman is, taking a sample of the wash here, right?
Yeah. And I can't remember. This guy was great crack.
I think was.
Yeah. Honestly, the only thing I can remember about this gentleman, because he was brilliant, was he took my. So when I was on the show, I was with myself with a couple of friends that I brought up from London, and he showed us into one of them as the rest of the tour walked on, because he knew I was working around with the company. He showed me one of the broken ones, and he was trying to figure out where the leak was. And I think the methods for trying to figure out where a leak was basically throwing down sawdust in certain spots until it plugs, and then you can go back in and it's just, I don't know. I love it. We're not aging in sawdust. There's no sawdust in your whiskey, but just
So does it sawdust patches? Is that what you're saying it does, or
what's that? Sorry,
the sawdust patches the leak, or?
So I think it was more just that as it was leaking out, I think it would pull it, so all the sawdust would clump wherever a leak was. It wouldn't plug it, but then you could see where that's coming from. Yeah, because it's going to pull more current in that direction. I presume. That was not to patch it so much as like to see where it's going.
That's really cool. That's really cool. Thanks for sharing that.
The level of work to maintain these, again, compared to stainless steel, a lot more to clean. You do have to replace them over time. The top pipe we're seeing here is like 2 or 3 feet. There's another 12 feet beneath it. It's a lot of work. We love it. It's what we do.
A lot of work. Yeah. So fermentation happens, probably about 55. I think I read it was 55 hours of fermentation, right? Roughly.
Yeah, I think that's the ballpark. I know that I've come across at some point I don't know why or in what situation, I've heard the number 90 being thrown around before. Not sure what was going on during that, but
I guess maybe you have some different expressions you guys maybe play around with. I don't know. I'm curious.
Yeah. I mean, there's not huge temperature fluctuations and variations, but again, I think that wood typically is going to lead to a longer ferment. Maybe if it's an older, don't quote me. Maybe someone out there knows if it's an older washback, maybe it's going to take even longer. I don't know.
In general, I guess 55 hours, and in some special cases, I guess you say like 90 hours. Which is very interesting.
I'm not sure I'd ever say 90 hours. I think I just read it once. Maybe I'm losing it.
No, I read it too. I read the same thing too. I read the same
Okay, thing good.
I'm curious, what that was. Some friends here says, Sharon says, water has a huge impact even in something as benign as pasta, even in pizza making. In New York, people in New York say, "Hey, pizza tastes great because of the water because it's so good," right? So I'm sure it's a major impact on beverage like whiskey. Yeah, I mean, so definitely. But then, obviously, it affects like the fermentation and whatnot. But then when you distill it, it also changes as well. Can we? And then our friend Mr. Yo Ai Yue is a friend of mine here from Taiwan. Do you guys do any kind of water treatment for pH balance during fermentation at all, or is it just Oh, and also, this is the natural water that you're using right now, right? You guys aren't, aside from filtering, you guys aren't you doing any other like treatment of the water?
No, we're not like trying to acidify or deacidify or.
Okay.
No, but again, this water, I actually don't know when it comes to the when it comes because so our casks arrive to the island by boat. Our whiskey leaves the island in casks by boat. Right, there's no bottling facility on the island. I mean, it's a small island. It's being sent down, to Scotland, the mainland of Scotland. So obviously, it is a different water source there. And actually, now that I think about it, I've never really asked or inquired about that water source, which seems like it would be another good note for me to ask about. So,
this hard water are you guys using? And when are you guys treating? Trying to soften the water. What about the pH balance? That's
those
are like the
coming into the distillery.
Dirty. Yeah. Sharon asks, aging in wood adds natural variation. Vat to vat will contribute little nuances, differences, just like the wood source. Are there certain types of cask vats that are used more often than others? Yes, of course. The industry uses predominantly bourbon casks because there's a big use of them. But we'll talk about maturation later because Highland Park is different.
For fermentation, for the washbacks, Oregon pine, Douglas fir, same tree. That's the super common one. It's not common. Most people are using stainless steel, but Highland Park is using the Douglas fir, the Oregon pine. That's a very traditional wood.
So wood washback. Obviously, it's different because wood also retains certain bacteria and yeast and things like that, which you don't have in stainless steel. They're not living in stainless steel. Wood, there is something alive there that adds to the fermentation. Tanisha, considering how far north the distillery is located and the associated climate, approximately what percentage is lost as the Angels share? 1%?
Yep.
Okay. So it is kind of lower than the average too. Okay.
Yeah, it is. It is indeed. Yeah.
Okay, very nice. Interesting. Thank you for asking that, Tanisha. I think Tanisha knows you or knows us. Yeah. Well, knows me, but have you ever met Tanisha or no?
Oh, well, if it's a Tanisha, I think it is, and I definitely have.
Yeah, she works in the spirits industry. Yeah.
Is it what Tanisha we talk? Is it Island Spirits Girl?
Tanisha, are you this Island Spirits girl? I know you. She works in the spirits, but I don't know if it's Island Spirits or whatever. But here it looks like there's a volleyball here. Is that soccer ball or volleyball? A soccer ball, probably.
Soccer ball, yeah. I miss you, Tanisha. I hope you're doing well. Let's have a call sometime soon. I miss seeing your face and sharing whiskey with you. Okay. Soccer ball. It's you know what it's for. It's for sending through those pipes, pressurized water, keep things nice and clean. And again, I know that this isn't the most romantic. Well, no, you know what? What are you into? For me, this is the romance of a distillery. This for me is a distillery. This is like what it is. But behind the scenes, it's all about keeping things insulated, patching things up. Again, those silly things about making sure that the pipes are cleaned in a very specific way, because then we're going to have less loss. We can be better environmental stewards. Sharon
says she has to go, but Sharon, you can for anybody that does have to go, if it's a school night, you can watch this afterwards, and most people do watch this afterwards. But have a good night. All right, so here we go. We're here. Here's the entree. The main stills here. We got 4 of them. All right.
Yep. I am sorry. It is the only photo I've got of the entree, because they just don't let me obviously get close to take photos. Something about alcohol. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess so. But
actually, that reminds me of a point.
Yeah, beautiful.
The mill.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to say, so the mill I was only able to take a photo of.
Between you and me, yeah.
I love the delay. You go. I'll jump in after.
Beautiful stills. And I wanted you to talk about them. So tell us about them.
Yeah. So we've been running. I'm trying to remember what was the date. Did I say it was 62? Is that the date that it was that we were looking at before? Let me pull. I've got the presentation on my side too. We've had these stills. We've had the four stills since 1962, but they have been replaced a few times since. Again, of course, it's a sacrificial process. I don't know the exact dates of each of the stills now, but they're all coming from Forsyths. We had slightly smaller ones in the 20s, the wash still in the 20s, and this photo, I think it's actually pretty difficult to see the difference between them. The wash stills used to be like 5,300 liters and jumped up to like 14,000 liters. So if you've got any, scotch that predates, a 1960 release, that was 40 years old, then it's going to taste very different.
Is Alan still with us? Alan, he's a big collector. Maybe Alan has some.
Dude, Alan, reach out to me.
Caring,
I don't need to drink it. I just need to smell it. I just need to nose it. That's all I need.
Yeah.
I'm very, very, very easy to please. And then the spirit stills were, those. And again, this makes sense, of course. You think about the time. A 5,000 liter still, and then a 5.5 and a 4, give or take. A couple of 100 liters here and there. Jumping up to like a 14.5 and a 9,000 liter still. You're falling pretty much within that very typical, style still. It's that very traditional pear shape, right? Larger, wider at the bottom, coming up to that 90-degree line arm at the top.
Yeah.
It is a coil. We're using steam, and actually we don't have. We're burning kerosene to raise the steam. Actually, that obviously doesn't impart any flavor to the whiskey itself. But that is what we're using to raise the steam as the fuel source, just because we don't have access to other fuel sources to use.
Yeah.
So, the distillation process itself, the only parts that I know, I'm not sure what I'm supposed to share, not supposed to share. The only thing I know is that the 4 shots I think are about 30 minutes, and then we're cutting it around about 65.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That's as much as I'll say. I'll let you take from that what you will.
Yeah. So, and this is you can confirm this. You said the hard cut is only 60 minutes.
No. So the 4 shots. So the hard cut, is whatever it takes in time to get us post that first 30 minutes to about 65%.
Okay, gotcha. I read. I saw somewhere.
Take this with a grain of take this with this is yes, it's a science, but it's really an art. Take that with a huge grain of salt.
Yeah, and then I read somewhere it says something roughly about distillation. The wash still lasts for 5.5 hours. Yep. 7.5 hours in the spirit still. The hard cut is run for 2 hours and 40 minutes on average.
What was the 2 hours and 40 minutes?
The hard cut.
Oh, yeah, that one.
Yes.
That's the part that I honestly don't know. But yeah, the 5.5 and the 7.5, I think, is about bang on.
Yeah. So it's almost like a third. It's almost like it's probably it looks like a third of the 7-hour total spirit still run.
It sounds like it'd be in that ballpark. I mean, what I can say is that again, to reverse engineer it and think about it however you want. we're pulling this at 69.5, right? 69.5, 69%. That is around about where we are. I think we've sometimes gotten as high as like 69.8, but of course, the second you hit 70, you're hitting a dangerous goods category, right?
Yeah.
So we can't go higher than that. We'd have to get a different classification because we're kind of like dealing with a different type of legality. Then when it comes to the spirit, we're filling at 69.5. So, you're
talking about percentage of ABV, right?
Yeah, that's it. Like 69.8 to anywhere between 69 and 69.8 ABV is the filling strength for Highland Park, which again, the vast majority of people are filling at what, 63? Is that right?
Yeah. Something like it is 60. Yeah. No. Yeah. So Highland Park does fill at a typically a little higher than the industry.
1%. It's a very moderate climate, so we don't have those big temperature fluctuations. So we're not going to get the only 1% angel share is great because we can age for a nice long time, and we don't have that same level of temperature fluctuation. So we really want to be able to obviously the ABV that you put into the cask just changed the way in which it's going to extract from the cask. It just is, obviously. So, how and why do we get to that point? The answer is that our whiskey makers have found that that's where they like it, and that's the end of it. So the wash stills that you see there, so obviously they are a bit bigger. I think that we're pulling that to around about 26% is when it's coming off of the wash still. And then obviously it's going through the spirit still itself.
So all that is getting the two stills in the back with the windows. Those are your wash stills, and the two towards us without the windows, those are your spirit stills. Just for anybody that wants to know the difference, the wash stills are always going to have
just about see it. If you look at the bulb at the bottom, the size of that at the bottom, you can see how the ones in the distance just cut that tiny bit higher up, right? It's a little bit wider in the neck, even though it's further away, and you can kind of just about see it there. But otherwise, they look like they're identical. It's not completely balanced, in its distillation because it is going from that larger to smaller, but it's still pretty there.
So Earl says, so not a lot of reflux, not like Glenmorangie, can't tell height of the neck. Yeah, so this is definitely not like, Highland Park. If you drink Highland Park, they're not trying to go for a clean, light style spirit like a Glenmorangie with much higher and much taller stills, generating much more reflux. But this isn't as small as Macallan either. I mean, these are Macallan size.
These are 9,000 liters. Macallan, we can be talking like, I'll say 3 and change. It's not 3 and change. It's a bit more, but it's less than 4. I'll say it like that. It's and again, you look at the line arm here. It's that 90-degree line arm. It isn't going to catch everything. We will get some reflux, but you're completely right. It's not an aggressive line arm. It's kind of tall. It's a pear shape. It is going to catch it. Even that the bulb at the bottom itself. You can imagine it. You can picture it looking at it. Just the amount of it that, as it tries to evaporate, will hit just the side of the still rather than even making its way up to the top. So, we get reflux. You're exactly right. We're not looking for the most oily spirit in the world. We're not looking for the cleanest, lightest, spirit in the world. We're looking for Highland Park.
Yeah, so you guys want to look at small stills, heavy spirit. Go Google a Macallan stills, which are much smaller. They have a downward line arm, right? Which they're looking for a heavier character there, and so this is mid range kind of distillate here, because it's not downward, it's not upward, there's no boil bulb, it's not so. I think it also speaks, now that I think about it, I think it also speaks to like the kind of like the balance of Highland Park. Right. It's not light, it's not heavy, it's just kind of very balanced. And I think it shows that, right?
Okay.
Here you have the warehouse number 3. Is this some kind of special experimentation warehouse?
This is unfortunately, as a lesser person here, I do not get to know all of the. If anyone was tuning in and hoping to hear about all the exciting things in the back, I do not get told those things. I try to ask. I do my best for you all. They definitely don't tell me because I don't think they trust me. But we're making our way in now, obviously, to the aging side of things. Again, we're going for higher casking strength here. It is a bit more efficient. Less barrels are needed to get some of the. Well, first off, less barrels are needed. Period. Right. If we brought everything down to 63.5, I don't know how many more barrels would end up going through a year. But we're using less wood by doing this, which is nice. And then, we do get that different kind of like level of extraction. So we're making about 2.5 million liters of new make a year. And what's that, like maybe 4 million bottles, I guess, give or take. We don't always run like 2.5 million is like a capacity. Last year, I think we were like doing 2.1 maybe. And we have a combination of, butts, hogsheads, puncheons, barrels. We have all kinds of things, aging there. But really, I guess there's two things to talk about for aging when it comes to Highland Park. One is the casks, which we'll talk about for a few seconds, and then also the warehouses as well. We've got 23 warehouses. We're looking at number 3 here.
You guys have 20. You guys have 20 some warehouses, right? What's the number again?
Yeah, 23.
23. Okay, I thought it was 20. I thought you guys had 26 or something, or you guys like.
Well, I'm trying to remember this as well. I think we might have 26, but I think 3 of them are being used for different purposes and aren't aging warehouses.
Yeah,
I could be wrong. Don't quote me. I shouldn't say things that could be wrong. That's poor form on my part. But I know that we're aging in 23. 19 of those are like very traditional dunnage, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of like stony gravel floor, stacked 3 high. That can't hold a whole lot, but the rest of them are racked.
But we do see this is more non-traditional as well, or unique. You guys do palletize, some of your casts here. And are these casts filled on the left here? Is there whiskey in actually these upright casks over here?
Yeah, I believe so. I think that honestly, I think that they're probably just being put like that for now, whilst we're waiting for things to for things to come in. But I mean, you can see that that's one of the dunnages, right? I mean, you can see the height that can take 3 casks. Maybe not like that, but 3 casks on its side.
It's not like
that.
Bourbon warehouse, obviously. It's like 10 floor, 24.
Right. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's the traditional iconic. So what's that cask we've got there?
Yeah,
see it as well.
Yeah. I'm trying to see if you took pictures of something like top secret over here. What is it?
Well, everyone, you can see the stencil on there, right?
James Grant.
James Grant and Sons still there, yeah.
Highland Park Distillery, yeah.
Well,
so that was
underneath
years ago. That was before.
I'll tell you right now that is that probably okay. So if you look beneath it, you can see that the cask underneath it is from Tavassa. So that's coming from Jerez. That's going to be a sherry cask right there. Tev is one of the cooperages that we're working with. Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
Can you click on one more picture for me?
Down one. Next.
Yeah.
This?
Okay. No, we'll go back. We already covered that.
Okay.
And then go back. Maybe I didn't include it. I do have a picture somewhere where you will see the more warehouse style, where they really are like palletized, and you'll see it much more clearly. I just didn't get pictures for it. Okay, never mind.
Long and short of it, you guys, a lot of warehouses, a lot of different casks, and something very unique about you guys is like a majority of them are sherry casks or sherry season, sherry casks, right?
Yeah.
For example, your Glenlivet or whatnot about Vinny's, the majority all bourbon cask, right? So bourbon cask is actually not your staple cask that you guys are using.
No. So the core thing for us is sherry season casks. There's not enough sherry casks in the world to supply one of the larger distilleries, let alone everybody else. So the vast majority of people, when they say double cask, they say double cask because they're aging 9 out of 12 years, 10 out of 12 years, 11 out of 12 years in a bourbon cask, and then it's going into a sherry cask, for a little bit to get a little bit of flavor out of it. We don't. The backbone of what we do is from day one, we're aging exclusively in unbroken, not broken down into staves, unbroken sherry season casks. As a company, we went into this, journey within Edrington, and so can we let's click on by 2 slides, I think.
Okay. Well, so that leads me to my next question. So obviously, you guys are all, McAllen, Glenrothes, Highland Park. How much like exchanging of casks or how much sharing of casks?
Yeah. Let's click on just 2 more, and then I'll answer that. Oh, there we go. Stop that. Perfect.
There you go.
So sharing of casks. So, we're super privileged to have a cooperage down at Glenrothes, which is fantastic. Because it means that we get to bring in all of our bourbon casks that are obviously broken down into staves, and we get to have our cooperage really make it to our exact needs, so that if there's something's not right, whatever it might be.
Yeah, there you go. I can see it better.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. It means that we really get a lot of control over the casks. And then the casks that we use, we only use casks 2 times for, Highland Park, Glenrothes, Macallan at most. And then after that, it's gone. Of course, it's gone from us, but it's used for other people. Obviously, there's a lot of thirsty distillers out there who are very happy for like a third fill, sherry cask. So.
Okay, so Highland Park, Glenrothes, and it's a across the board that none of you guys use more than a second fill.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
I did inquire at Glenrothes just because, and if you don't know about the history of Glenrothes, we should do this again. Actually, you're already doing Glenrothes.
I'm doing Macallan with one of your colleagues next week.
Zach, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. If we've not talked about Glenrothes, let's do Glenrothes sometime, because that's a cool distillery as well.
Let's do that.
So the right. So there's not enough sherry casks in the world. So what do? You change your flavor profile, and of course, Highland Park, 60% is probably the cask. Glenrothes or the Macallan, probably 80% is the cask, right? Yeah. So you've got a choice. You can say goodbye, and that's that. We're going to use bourbon casks and just completely change the flavor profile, or we can find a way to make it happen. So what we chose to do is we actually now pull oak from northern Spain. You'll see Lugo's written there, but we're really talking about Galicia, Asturias, kind of those kinds of areas. Quercus roba. We'll pull in Quercus alba, American oak from Kentucky, Ohio, Missouri, even parts of Maryland and Virginia, West Virginia, I think. Wherever is the trees that we want and need, they'll be felled. They'll stay in the forest for another couple of years. Then they'll be, cut into staves, which we control this, right? We can control where in the forest it's pulled from, the age of the tree, how straight it is, what the mineral content of the soil is, and then we'll have all of this stuff. The drying, the seasoning, it's all pulled down to the south of Spain to Jerez. They're raised into casks. We control the temperature of the inside of the cask, the shape, the size of the cask. We control we don't control the bodegas, but we have this lovely symbiotic relationship, right? Where they effectively make sherry exclusively for us, or a particular sherry exclusively for us. And that's a high acidity, dry Oloroso, right?
Okay.
We've played with this recipe
across all 3 expressions.
You'll find this as a truth across all 3, because we don't, there's a power in all of us doing this together, means that we can actually make it happen as well.
Right.
And so, I know that we have a gentleman by the name of Stuart McPherson, who's the master of wood for the Macallan, and he, they went through so many different tests and tries and practices at different shapes, different sizes, different temperatures of the inside of the cask, never charred, but always toasted. And then they tried different pHs, ABVs, sherry, things like this. So we found that now what we do is we have about 1.5 years with a high acidity dry Oloroso sherry. We find it breaks down the hemicellulose to the point that we want. It imparts the flavor of the sherry that we want. But more importantly, it leaves the cask that we want as well, right? Yeah.
You said 1.5 years. You say 1.5 years.
About 1.5 years. And sometimes it could be 2, I believe. It's like saying, is every bottle of Highland Park 12? 12? No, yes, of course.
So 1.5 years of seasoning, And is that because you guys do different casks, like you're saying? You guys do the hogsheads, the ASBs, obviously you guys have your butts, whatnot.
The ASBs are really bourbons. Those are rebuild bourbon casks. It's puncheons, butts, and hogsheads really is what's coming up. That I'm told about.
Huh?
That I'm told about. Okay.
So Highland Park mostly uses, you said, puncheons, butts, and hogsheads.
Yep. And then it's, I know that we've got a huge amount of hogsheads actually up at Highland Park. Don't know why. I guess, Gordon Motion's our master whiskey maker. I guess Gordon, likes using them, or likes the flexibility of using them. At least there's a good amount of hogsheads up there. But Gordon always has his eyes out for other casks, right? We've had Highland Park Twisted Tattoo came out recently. We're using ex-bourbon and Rioja casks. We did.
Yeah, so even having an ex-bourbon thing is kind of like it's a rarity for you. And then so we have a Tong Yu Chen, our friend Jack, my friend Jack from Taiwan here, also asking in terms of the ratio. Do you know the ratio percentage? Because I even read like you guys use like up, most of your casks, like 80 or 90% of your casks are all going to be sherry seasoned.
Yeah,
obviously,
that's great.
You could use like ASB, and then you season the ASBs and whatnot.
Yeah.
Is that right? Is that 80-90% or more?
So I'd say that's a great question. I don't know the exact amount. I would say that's probably a low end ballpark. I'd say that for Highland Park, I'd say that's probably a low end ballpark of like 80% being sherry casks. I think it's going to be quite a bit more than that in sherry casks.
Because I also read something about like since 2004 or something, you guys have been exclusively using sherry season casks.
For our core range, for the 12, the 18, the 21, the 25, the 30, the 40, the 50, exclusively sherry casks, right?
Okay, gotcha.
Of our core expressions is sherry casks. And again, these casks, once they've been emptied, we keep a tiny bit of sherry in there just to keep them hydrated, right? The last thing we want to do is get it to Highland Park, pour it in Highland Park, and have it run out everywhere. So it comes to the island by boat, gets filled at 69.5, so we don't have to use water in the filling process.
Yeah.
High extraction, which is good because we only have 1% angel share, which really speaks to the temperatures there. So it's good to fill with a high extraction point for us. And then once it's ready, so vast majority, sherry casks. We use both Quercus Alba and Quercus Robo. When I say that we use American sherry casks, I don't mean repurposed bourbon casks. I mean virgin American white oak Quercus Alba turned into a cask that is filled with sherry. The sherry industry does use sherry casks. It does use American oak too, because it is cheaper for bodegas to buy American oak and ship it than it is to get European oak from northern Spain. It's so pricey now.
Yeah.
And then obviously, European oak is going to give us the dried fruits. When it's a sherry cask, it's going to give us, cinnamons, nutmegs, all those baking spices. It's going to give us, the figs, the dried fruits, raisins, orange peel. Say again.
Much more tannins in European oak than
more tannin, much more color, much more structure, much more tannin. And a big thing for me, especially when you have the Highland Park 18, is that like now I understand that it's probably furfural, I'm guessing is what I'm smelling, but just that real like marzipan and sherry character. It's like, for me, and being from England, it's like a Bakewell tart. If you ever had a Bakewell tart, like frangipane or marzipan with like this like tart cherry, it's like Highland Park 18 just like sings this wonderful flavor. And it really is down to it's down to the casks. The casks again are every step is important. Every step, if we change it, we'll change it. But the biggest contributor is the casks. Of course, peat is massive for us, but the casks are the biggest thing. And so, to think about this a different way, we now, apart from when we decide to use somebody else's casks because we don't want to turn them down, I don't know who else we're buying from. I've seen a video of somebody on a tour where they saw port casks before Highland Park Fire came out, and they were like, "Oh, this isn't sherry," and they were like, "It's not being used. It's nothing." And then, of course, Fire came out. But we are now no longer reliant upon commercial waste, right? Like, if you think about this from the long play, as everyone, like sherry, I love sherry. I'm sad to say I don't see it making that much of a big resurgence. I wish it would. I don't think it will. Cocktail bartenders, a few trendy bars in, New York and Europe, yes, they're trying to bring sherry back. People are not looking for fortified wines in the same way. Prove me wrong. I hope it changes. If it doesn't, even the people that are using sherry casks for 9 months are going to have to rethink what they're doing. We are not going to have, to my knowledge, like we should not have a major change in our flavor profile ever now. Like we're set, and everyone else at some point is going to have to wrestle with this. We made our big wrestle. Pick your poison. I understand that we're using sherry casks that we've made. I know that these aren't some 30-year-old Solera cask. Like I know that. I get right. Yeah, 100 years old. I get that. I know that. What these casks are custom built, designed specifically to produce the whiskey that we want to make from day one. You know, and then we sell them after. So we, yeah.
So Jack, Tong Yu Chen, answer your question. And so this is very interesting too, and I had to do a little digging to find this too. It's like, so 100% of your core expressions are all sherry seasoned casks.
Yeah,
majority
of finishing.
Yeah, a majority of the casks you're using hogsheads, and I guess the puncheons, things like that. Not as many ASBs, right?
Well, no ASBs for the core, because we don't make ASBs in Spain, to my knowledge. The only ASBs are actual bourbon casks, right?
Yeah. So do you guys ever take a bourbon cask and then season the bourbon cask and then age it whiskey in that? Do you guys do that?
No, to my knowledge, no. Like, who knows what they do? Who knows what fun they're having? But they definitely don't tell me, because again, I'll talk to you and then you'll know, and then the cat will be out the bag, and
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Like honestly, the closest thing I can think of to that is like when Glenrothes used to do the peated casks, right? Aging in a peated cask. That's the closest thing I can think of to us repurposing a cask in a weird and different way. But no, the bourbon cask, to my knowledge, they come in, they get rinsed down with some demineralized water, they get built, used.
I'm curious. So how much of the cask are that you guys use are actually made in Glenrothes versus sourced from another cooperage?
If it's a sherry cask, it's all 100% sourced, to my knowledge, through our program of making the best casks in the world. That's what we do. If it's a bourbon cask, to my knowledge, 100% of it comes through the Glenrothes, because they're obviously brought over in staves. So the Glenrothes is responsible for quality control, checking, and rebuilding into the bourbon casks again, or the ex-bourbon cask.
So with that said, then, so the Glenrothes cooperage, Highland Park's probably not using much of that.
No,
the cast from the
not much, but like in the last few years, Full Volume used ex-bourbon. Twisted Tattoo used ex-bourbon. Okay, well that's it. But
so you guys aren't seasoned. So all the seasoning is done in Spain.
Correct. Yeah, I mean it's because it's and understand as well. We say sherry seasoned casks because it feels more transparent. Yeah. But the reality is that they are legally sherry casks.
Sherry casks, yeah.
They're legally sherry casks. We're not using sherry wine that's not sherry from Jerez, but is like just over the border from somebody else and outside of regulations. No, we're using sherry. We're using dry Oloroso. The aging times, just everything about it is they are sherry casks, but we also understand that we're not getting these from Lustau, like in from their aging regime. So we say sherry seasoned, again, legally speaking, they're sherry casks, but
yeah, they are. Yeah,
it really, I think, again, for us, what it is it's taking control of the biggest influencer in our final flavor profile. Highland Park's a bit different because obviously the peat is massive too, but yeah. And then even Glenrothes, the Glenrothes core range, that's sherry. That's sherry, Yeah. Now.
Gary asked, "What was the highest peated HP?" And I think Ryan answered, "It's the Valfather."
Yeah. So So this series, the Valkyrie, the Valknut, and then the Valfather. I'm gutted. It's not actually coming to the States this year. It's supposed to be down here. I'm going to have to go up and see a friend up in Canada to get some, or have it shipped from a friend in the UK. I've not tasted it yet. Yes, each of them, we're escalating our use of peat. So this is really where we've been playing with our levels of peat. And then when it came to the Valknut, we kind of also took it a little step further in the sense that we did use this tartan barley from that island as well. And tartan barley, as a barley itself can also take more peat. I'm trying to remember if it's because of the size of the grain or if it was to do with the husk of the grain or maybe how porous it was, but for whatever reason, it took a lot more peat. So we peated it more heavily and it also absorbed more peat.
Yeah, I imagine it's probably more starch because, I don't know. I can't imagine the husk part because like nowadays they're talking about, there's less protein, there's less, and the husks, the size of the husk and barley's changing, whatnot.
Right.
But that's another can of worms too. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, you're right. The yes, it is the most peated whiskey that we've released to date, and it's coming in at a whopping like 2.7 or 2.9
as a distillate, right?
No, as it hits the shelf.
Yeah. Okay. As a in a bottle. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Gotcha.
Yeah.
And
again,
and Gary asked, "What's the range?" Do you have something to add? I'm sorry.
So I'll answer the Gary question about the range of HP juice as well as what I was about to say, which was that again, we know this from other brands, right? Even the brands that not brands, distilleries. Well, no, this distillery has more than one brand. The brands that are really going for we're going to be the most peated in the world. The most peated in the world doesn't always reflect to being like how we perceive the smokiest in the world anyway. So Highland Park being more peated, you actually really do notice it. I mean, the Valkyrie may seem super low, because it's probably like 2.5, 2.7 maybe ppm. I can really tell the difference. I mean, the way in which the smoke interacts with my palate, how I feel it on my tongue, like the physical sensations, as well as the aftertaste especially, is massively different. So you shouldn't be fooled by the fact that it sounds so low compared to these people that are putting up big numbers on the board. Yes, we're not looking to do that. We're looking for balance in what we do. They can do what they do and they can make it delicious. That's awesome. But yeah, Valfather's the most peated. And then in terms of the age ranges, so the Highland Park going to Famous Grouse, I don't know what age ranges make it out to them. I know that in the past we used to have obviously you have Famous Grouse 12 and the age statements, which you just don't see these days. What I do know of Famous Grouse is that Famous Grouse is not a situation where they get what's left. They get some pretty serious picking right when it comes to the cask that they need, and so
because just put this in perspective. How much Famous Grouse is being sold by Edrington, volume wise compared to
I don't know the answer to that. I will tell you now, though. I mean, Famous Grouse is the #1 selling blended Scotch in Scotland, and I think the whole of the UK. I mean,
it's a lot. A majority of the whiskey being made at Highland Park is going to be going to Famous Grouse.
Yeah, and more is going into blends than is going into single malt. Yes, absolutely. And then
just to put it in perspective, 90% of Scotch whiskey made and drank is going to be 90%.
Yeah,
is going to be blends.
Yeah. Does Highland Park use third sherry or bourbon cask?
Policy. The third fill, but I think we answered that question. Edrington, Rothes, Highland Park only ever uses second.
At most, the second fill. Typically, huge amounts of first fill, and then that's with that. I know that Glenrothes has started to look at just from an environmental standpoint. Now, the truth is, us only using them 2 times, we're selling them on to people who are going to continue using them. So we're, whilst we've kind of created our own source for casks, we're fueling a gap that's going to be sourced somehow anyway, right? The other distilleries need their casks too. And if they end up using ours as a secondary thing, then they're going to take it, right? So that's I know that Glenrothes is playing around in the cooperage with like how they can like repurpose or like restore casks. What if a cask has been used 2 times and it's incredible? We don't want to move it on, but it just needs tweaking. I know they're playing with that, but I don't think it's in our regime at the moment.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, do you guys, in terms of like sharing casks, like has there been anything where like Macallan used the first fill and then Highland Park uses a second fill?
No, not to my knowledge. I mean, just the logistics and the miles of it again.
Yeah.
We're taking things up to, and from the whiskey making perspective as well. The Macallan whiskey making team, the Highland Park whiskey making team, the Glenrothes whiskey making team, and again, actually, Glenrothes Highland Park is both Gordon Motion as the master whiskey maker for both.
Yeah.
You know your stills, you know your new make, and you know your casks, and so you've had your first round, you're tasting it, you do this all day every day, you already have your you have your mental memory bank, right, of saying, oh, this is how this tastes after one fill. They know where this goes if they use it again for a refill, as the refill or not. So sending it off to someone else is like a mystery bag. I mean, it's nonsensical for them to do, really.
Also, I'm curious, then, does Famous Grouse use any of these casks?
Yeah, I honestly, I mean,
yeah.
I honestly don't know the answer, but I would hazard a guess and say surely, really, just surely.
But then even naked grouse uses first fill, right?
Naked grouse takes these from the other distilleries, vatted, right? So no grain whiskey, and then puts that into a first fill cask.
Yeah.
Right. Now there's one big thing that we actually skipped here. Didn't skip. We've just gotten to. We've aged. We're on the other side. I'm sorry, everybody. I don't know what fancy casks we've got aging around. They won't tell me. I don't know. You don't know. I don't know.
Ask you that, but I think I figured because one of my questions was like, what are some of the oldest Highland Park casks that you know of?
Yeah, I've tasted
things. I also asked in terms of are there any PX, casks of Highland Park?
Don't know.
Because Oloroso, the kind of maybe top secret stuff that I sometimes ask, and I sometimes get the answers to, but mostly
I can give you my honest answer. My honest answer is I don't know.
Don't worry. Yeah.
I've tasted a 40.1% cask from 19. I'd have to go back through my notes. It might have been the 40s. It could have been the 60s. It would have been the 60s because then it would have gone through an Orcadian vintage. It might have been older than that. I tasted one when I was there that was ludicrous and divine, and that was really pretty old. But for us, especially on Orkney, even with the 1%, there's a limit, right? We're losing 1% every year. The only way that we'd be able to make it to higher than 40 odd years for the most part is that we're going to have to take more than one cask and combine them just to get that surface area back up, because otherwise we're going to lose more.
But you guys do have an OB bottling of a 50-year
Highland
Park, right? I mean,
two casks
released by Highland Park is, I think the highest is 50.
Yeah, we do indeed, and that one, is a combination of that one. If I remember correctly, is a combination of two casks again. Especially it's funny. It's wonderful doing this during quarantine because it's been so long. But it's things like the 50-year. I've not yet had the fortune to try. Highland Park, if you're listening to me, send me some, please.
Yeah, please
try.
I just want to smell it, James.
I just want to smell it. I'll give it back. I just need to nose it. But there is one of the sexy thing that we do that I didn't get to yet, which is we do cask harmonize. We do still cask harmonize, and it's kind of an important thing and a big deal for us, and that's really where we're going to take all of these casks that we've. Look at this! It's like stepping back in time. Just everything we've just covered.
Ryan was share social media. We did this earlier, but I'll put it back up again here.
Oh, thank you. And so cask harmonization, right? So we're taking all of these, we're taking the pre-aged whiskey, and we bring it down to 46%, and we cask harmonize. And Tanisha, this is what we're going to get into. I knew it would be you that would pick up this question. It sounds like I looked at the questions before you put it there. So we bring it down to 46%, right? At 46%, we're going to be bringing things out of solution, right? And this is for the core range. This is not for everything. Anything that's above like 46 point something or 48 point something, we're pretty much just not chill filtering at all. It'll just be the light filter to get rid of anything in there. We will bring it down to 46 because it will bring some of those long chain molecules and those fats and things out of solution. It will get cloudy. By cask harmonizing, we leave it and then it becomes clear again, right? Once it becomes clear again, we chill it down to a blisteringly cold 4 degrees, which is kind of the temperature in Orkney a lot of the time anyway. And then it gets passed through a pretty wide filter. That is legally chill filtering, yes, but there's 2 things that happen to it here. First, we've brought it down to 46 and allowed the things that if we were to just take it down to 46 and then flash chill it to like 0 or -0, as is common practice for people that do chill filtering, we would obviously strip those out. Instead, the cask harmonization as well is just letting everything get to know each other, soften itself down, say hi. What's going to happen is it comes out of solution, it gets back into solution. So even if we were to chill filter it more aggressively there, we'd capture less of the things, we'd still take less out that we didn't want to, but we only take it down to 4 degrees. I mean, again, that's our whiskey's natural habitat anyway. So the answer is yes, but yes,
Yeah. So are you guys so at 46 and above, there's no need to chill filter. So are you guys chill filtering at that point and then watering down?
That's it. So we're bringing it down to 46 for our cask harmonization.
Okay.
That's where it then goes through the filtering, but again, post harmonization, right? So bring it down to 46 because at 46, that's the point where now it's going to come out of, it's going to get cloudy or those fats are going to come out that for whatever reason people don't want to see in their glass. I'm sure that none of us on the call care, would rather just have it there. But we bring down to 46, it comes out of solution and gets cloudy. We leave it. After we've left it, it becomes completely clear again. It's at that point when it's already 46 that we'll bring it to 4, do it through the light screen, which will take out some things, but like Gordon really walked me through it, and I always get touchy about it because I'm just I'm not a huge fan of it as a process. And when Gordon walked me through it, he kind of really helped me understand that it is legally absolutely chill filtering. That's what it's called, but it's really not the chill filtering that we think of, where it is like really brought down. We're pulling out flavor from the whiskey and all of these different things, and it's all again down to that cask harmonization and leaving it, because all the things that we'd otherwise pull out kind of stay inside the whiskey. We do still pull out some of the long chains that are going to make it cloudy afterwards, but yeah.
So the cask harmonization, that's interesting. I forgot to ask about that. I can't remember why. But that's interesting. So how often are you guys cask harmonizing? Is it kind of like, or you
everything from the core batch is cask harmonized?
Okay, everything in the cask. Okay, and then so is it at the point of actually when you're about to batch and bottle?
Yeah, so it's kind of
is it throughout maturation?
No. It's the gap from. It's the gap between, okay, we're aged. This is the blend. Let's bring it down. Let's get everything. Let's bring everything down to 46, which isn't our bottling strength. Our bottling strength is 43.
You're marrying, you're vatting, and then you're diluting.
Yep.
Okay.
And then
you're talking about, right?
And so actually, one thing I don't know there is, so I don't know whether, so that's a great question. I don't know whether we marry at full strength, marry at cask.
Yeah.
No, I think we're bringing it together. I think we're marrying as it's marrying and harmonizing in the cask, if you like, it's already at 46. Like it's being brought down to 46 by that point.
Right. Yeah.
So then the harmonization in the cask collectively is 46.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So you're almost you're doing like a marriage prior to bottling. So is this like happening like a year or like 6 months before bottling or a month before bottling? Do we know?
I can't remember the exact number, and I think I've got it written down here somewhere.
That's a very interesting process because it's an extra step. It's definitely an extra step.
It is, and
And
the
and
extra step really.
yeah.
Sorry, I was going to say the extra step really of the marriage, not only for obviously the mellowing, the way in which they interact with each other and get to know each other. A big part of it is so that we don't have to aggressively chill filter. Like we do still filter, but a big part of it, and doing it at 46, is so that we don't have to go down the route of the aggressive. We're able to get rid of a lot of the cloudiness that would otherwise come without having to do that, sub-zero fine mesh triple pass process that people go through. So it's a two-shot thing. First, the marrying and the flavor melding. Secondly, so that when we do the filtration, we can just be much more chill about it.
Yeah,
it's funny.
Well, yes, because your traditional method is obviously just you take 100, maybe a couple hundred casks, you vat them, and then you dilute and maybe let it sit for a month or two, and then you bottle, right? Or you filter and then you bottle, right? So, but Highland Park, this cask harmonization is very unique because what you're doing is you're taking casks and you're marrying them and putting them back in casks, and then dilution, and then when you're ready to bottle, then filtering. So you're giving that time to mellow, and actually that's a very interesting thing that I found also. I think that also helps understand maybe why Highland Park is so balanced, because of the time, because like if anybody wants to do an experiment, right? If you have whiskey or new make or whatever, and then you just throw like a big batch of water into it, it changes drastically what the whiskey tastes like. And or even if you put two bottles of Highland Park together, that also changes. Let's say you take two bottles of Highland Park 12 and you threw them in another bottle. Even that will change the taste of the whiskey, just because there's things that needs to kind of mold together that takes time. That's why there's a marriage time. Maybe sometimes a month or a couple months or whatnot. Even there's things like bottle shock, distiller, when you're bottling, you don't just bottle and then put it right on the shelf. You bottle, you let it sit in the bottle for a little bit, and then so craft distillers, they bottle, and then they let it sit. There's such a thing as bottle shock. Google it up. If you guys want to Google bottle shock here. It's an interesting thing. But yeah, so Gary says here, so Earl says, are there any duty-free releases, Highland Park, single cask, or for World Whiskeys, and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely duty-free releases all the time.
There's a lot. Yeah, you'll find the ones where, we'll do the off years, so you can get like 14-year, 16-year, which are maybe closer to the core range. So you've got like Spirit of the Bear, Spirit of the Eagle. We've had many different like global travel retail bottlings that come out, and I know that I think that Journey of the Raven, Spirit of the Raven is either around the corner or is already out there now. So what you're seeing there for that single cask for World of Whiskies is a singular thing for them. That's just that's a particular client buying a single cask for them. I've actually got, I think I've got their 19-year Glenrothes somewhere around, which is delicious as well. But yes, there are other ones. What you're looking at there is a much more unique singular thing because it's a single cask. There are more globally available expressions of Highland Park. There's many. Around.
And then Gary says, how do you guys determine which area gets which single casks, like, Gotham edition, or I think there's a Nor'easter here, in the Northeast region. Like who's picking that? Are you picking that, or like, who's giving these names kind of thing?
Yeah. Yeah. And are you going to pick a cask? If you're going to pick a cask, let me know. I'll go pick a cask.
Yeah.
Yeah, so naming, some of the naming actually can happen quite locally over here. Like, some of it is given kind of like back to the team over here to decide about how we'd like things to be named. The casks, at the end of the day, casks have to be chosen by someone. It's really Gordon Motion. If it's commercially available, it's our master whiskey maker, Gordon Motion. I actually know that Martin Mark Budson, or at least I have it on some authority that Martin's had his hand in, at least giving some things for this. Martin's our global brand ambassador, like a real modern Viking soul, used to be part of the Danish Navy as well. Like really, really amazing man. And yeah, when it comes down to it, I mean, at the end of the day, it does come down to the master whiskey maker, because they also, you're not just choosing, whilst it seems inconsequential, it's really not. And there's a reason that we completely skipped over this, and I'll tell you why. It's very important for us to not only have the flavor profile that we need, but it's very important for us to have the color in the casks that we need, because we never had caramel coloring. You're never going to find E150A. We never use spirit caramel. So we're not just concerned with the maturation and the flavor quality. We are 1,000% concerned about the color of the whiskeys. If Gordon makes a perfect tasting Highland Park 18 and it's pale, he's got to scrounge around to find something that's exactly Highland Park 18 but too dark. It's a thing for us. We think it's an important thing. We think it's an honest thing to do. We understand, it's just color correcting. I get it. But these days it's not color correcting. So many people's 12-year-olds that are aged for 11 years in ex-bourbon casks look darker than ours that have been aged exclusively in sherry casks. You're like, there's no way. Are you kidding me? Like, and it is what it is. It's a mindset thing. Color, at the end of the day, the colors, the ages, whatever anyone else says about any of these is utterly meaningless. It comes down to you, unless you're a collector, in which case other people's opinions matters heavily. But it's always going to come down to you, your own personal preference and choice.
Yeah.
But who picks the casks? Gordon, the whiskey making team, and then who gets to name it? We do get to name them locally, or they might get named after certain things. Like, when the this Draken ship came over to us from Norway, and it was actually this thing had I got to go on it in DC actually when it was here. The ship had it had an outboard motor because it legally had to have one, but it wasn't used. And it's a Viking longship made to scale, and this crew sailed it over the Atlantic to us. They were trying to do. Wow. They were doing Leif Erikson's journey basically, and Leif Erikson's ship. It was incredible.
Wow.
And,
crazy.
So we did name, we named one of our bottlings, one of our single casks after that as well.
It's just got 3 single casks, and they named it after 3 major cities, and they called it the Taipei number 1, Taichung number 1, and Kaohsiung number 1, which is specific to each region. They picked 3 casks. Yeah, it was interesting. And then Jack Chen asks. Were you guys, are there any special, this is, another question is I might have along with his question is, are there any special releases? I mean, I'm sure there's going to be releases. Dark, the Light, I think was one of your bigger releases.
Yeah, beautiful.
Volume, I think was a limited release, right?
So, we've
other bourbon casks type, things, because Highland Park and the bourbon cask is awesome. Any other kind of bourbon cask, a core range, or new releases that's going to be featuring bourbon cask, or any other new questions?
Yeah, here's my take on that. Would I suspect there to be a future bourbon cask release that I just don't know about yet? Yes. Why? Because bourbon casks are readily available in the world, and Highland Park tastes incredible in bourbon casks. Do I anticipate there being something one day? Yes. I hope. Yes. Do I know? No, I don't. There's nothing on the horizon other than the cask strength as part of our core range that's coming out soon. So we're going to have a non-age statement cask strength that is part of the Highland Park core range. And I don't know much of the ins and outs of it yet. It should hopefully still be coming out this year. I'm not sure, Ryan, if you've seen what's happening with NPDs, if there's any chance with, obviously in the coronavirus, there's, supply chain just is different, than it was. But I'm really excited, looking forward to that. Valfather obviously has come out, as we kind of mentioned before. But in terms of things coming down the pipeline, I don't know of anything coming down the pipeline that is, that was aged in ex-bourbon. I guess we'll have to wait and see. I think, yeah.
All right. Well, so Ryan says full volume was also kosher. COVID has slowed down releases, so we'll see. I guess I'm sure. Just stay tuned to I showed this earlier to James and Highland Park's social media over here at Whiskey Darcy, at Highland Park US, and also or at the Whiskey Steward. But I think that's about it. I think 2.5 hours. I think we're pretty good,
Yeah.
11:45 right now. I think people need to go to bed, but we could probably go on and on, and again, what a pleasure it is. What a pleasure, James. Thank you so much for your time.
No, thank you so much.
Yeah, this has been just a great, some really great, just little pieces of information that you just really can't get anywhere, like the little picture of the swallow. That's not science or nerdy or something to do with the distillation and the production, but that's just a cool thing that adds character and adds that romance to the distillery and the making and the whiskey making process, and but also we touched on so much stuff, little details and things like cask harmonization, things like the peat, and we saw some great pictures that you took yourself at the distillery, just some awesome information here. And, a lot of great questions from the audience as well. And a lot of people still on. Thank you for staying with us till the end. But even if you missed something or you're like, oh, what did James say? Or what did Alex say? You can always review this again. Tons of people, go back and review this again. You can view this on the Whiskey Steward page on Facebook, so you can check it out. But awesome time. I had a great time. My Highland Park knowledge, hopefully for everybody else, gone up immensely. Just from studying for this broadcast, as well as just speaking with you, James. Awesome stuff. Thanks again for your time. Do you have anything you want to add or talk or mention?
No, just really thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. Yeah, like you said, some great questions. It's I think I said to you before, it's rare that it seemed like it wouldn't be, but it's rare that we honestly get the opportunity to really get into some of the nitty gritty things and have people actually come with questions like, whoa, yeah, I do not know, I don't know the answer, but now I want to, which is great. And I think, to your point, like with the swallows, no matter what the brand is, no matter what the company is, at the end of the day, it's people still behind the scenes that make all of our whiskeys, whoever it is. And, we've got science has gotten us so far, but nothing has replaced our nose and our palates yet. And, no matter how large or how small a distillery may feel at any point, it's still people. It's people, it's grains, and it's, casks and some distilling in the middle, it's it.
Yeah, and I think I think also that point was stressed here today as well, in terms of keeping with tradition, the culture, the history, and just being stickler about making quality stuff and keeping with how things are done, and it shows. And Highland Park obviously has a huge following. Great whiskey, extremely balanced, as people have even mentioned mentioned in the comments. And I think we touched on a few things that kind of explain or could shed some insight as to why Highland Park is balanced, just from the things that we discussed today. And awesome time. Thank you, everybody. Thank you to the Edrington family. Thank you, Ryan, for staying with us and answering and chiming in on some questions over there. Really appreciate that, Ryan. Thanks for supporting. And thanks again, James. And, like you said, maybe we can do a Glen Rothis thing sometime and talk a little bit more about that. Again, Thanks, James. Thanks, everybody. Have a good night. James, want to sign out for us or anything? Or say or Skull, right? I think you're
Skull.
Skull, yeah.
It's not Slanger. It's Norse or Swedish, and that's Skull.
Yeah, Skull, everybody. Thanks, everybody, and we'll see you guys again soon. Thanks, and stay safe, everybody, and drink some good whiskey and drink Highland Park. Have a good night.